Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time when the Oregon Trail was less a leisurely road trip and more a grueling test of endurance, luck, and patience. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a dusty frontier town, your wagon creaking under, the weight of everything you think you'll need for months of slow, uncertain travel into the unknown. There's a wooden sign nailed to the trading post porch that says, Independence, Missouri, and that's the last name you'll recognize for a long while. Behind you, the smell of soot and manure wafts from a dozen cook fires and corrals, but ahead, just sky, prairie, and a promise that somewhere, over 2,000 miles away, a better life is waiting. You probably won't survive this without learning a thing or two about the mistakes that doomed many before you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments, because I want to imagine where in the world you're joining this slow trek tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. And where better to begin than with the most underappreciated nightmare of the whole ordeal, packing. Not glamorous, not exciting, but critical, because your success or failure, your comfort or misery, starts with what you bring and what you foolishly leave behind. You've got a wagon, barely 6 feet wide and 12 feet long. It's made of rough-hewn wood sealed with pitch and creaks when you lean on it. There's no suspension, no brakes. It's covered by a canvas stretched so tightly over bent oak ribs that in the sunlight it glows like parchment. This is home now. You have to fit your entire life inside this moving box, which will jolt and rattle across rivers, rocks and ruts so deep they snap axles like twigs. So you pack, or overpack. Like most people, a cast iron stove seems like a great idea until you realize it weighs nearly 200 pounds and cracks your wagon frame the first time the trail gets rough. You bring a fancy mirror. You bring fine china. You bring a bookshelf of novels. You bring 12 wool coats because someone told you the mountains are cold, forgetting that you'll have to drag them through Kansas in July. One man packed an upright piano. It didn't make it past the Platte River. History tells us people brought all kinds of nonsense, from porcelain wash basins to grandfather clocks, convinced they'd need them out west. But once the trail humbled them, those prized possessions were tossed along the path like breadcrumbs for buzzards. Historians still argue whether the standard advice, 200 pounds of flour, 75 pounds of bacon, 15 pounds of coffee per adult, was accurate preparation or a one-way ticket to a lopsided wagon. Some even brought barrels of water, only to find out they sloshed and warped the floorboards or leaked out before day 3. You quickly learn that everything you carry comes with a cost. Weight means slowness. Slowness means danger. Danger means death, or at least severe discomfort. So you must make brutal choices. Do you bring the spare axle or the extra bedding? Do you pack for survival or for sanity? Shoes or soap? Salt pork or dried apples? You're told to plan for 5 months. That's 5 months of food, clothing, tools, medical supplies, and emotional stability for every person and animal in your party. Oh, and don't forget ammunition. You'll need it for hunting or defending yourself if things go sideways. There's a weird tension to it all. You're expected to be prepared for everything and yet light enough to make 20 miles a day on uneven terrain without destroying your wagon or killing your oxen. The oxen, by the way, hate you. They glare at you with bovine disdain as you tighten harnesses and check the yoke bolts. You chose oxen over mules because they're sturdier and cheaper, but they're slower. And unlike horses, they don't seem to enjoy your company. One of them has already chewed through your last rope. A teenage boy at the blacksmith's told you to bring tar, lye, and lamp oil. Your neighbor insisted you couldn't survive without a collapsible boat frame. A passing preacher swore by calico, cloth, and hymnals. There is no consensus on what you need, only guesses, hopes, desperation. You close the back gate of the wagon and tie it down. Everything rattles. You pray it holds. You stare up at the wooden wheels, each bound with an iron tire, and wonder whether they'll make it past the Missouri River, let alone the Rockies, There are no paved roads ahead, just dirt paths, buffalo trails, and guesswork. The Oregon Trail isn't marked. It's made by those who go before you, and only loosely followed by those who come next. There's a fork ahead where one route may lead to better grazing or faster travel. But if you choose wrong, you could be stuck in mud or snake country for weeks. A single decision at this early point could cost you the lives of everyone you know. No pressure. And then there's the weather. You pack canvas to patch the wagon, but what about rain gear for yourself? A poncho, a waxed cloak, or just a soaked blanket, and the comforting knowledge that pneumonia is historically accurate. Many travelers tried to protect their gear with tarps or greased cloth, only to find rivers seeping into their flour sacks anyway. Some pioneers even wrapped everything in oilskin, only to discover too late that it trapped moisture in just as effectively as it kept it out. You think you're ready. You've double-checked the salt. You counted the gunpowder. You've got a tin of peppermint drops for morale. But the moment you step out of town, that optimism evaporates in the summer heat. You glance over your shoulder, one last time at the town's church steeple, already looking small against the widening sky. A crow circles overhead. The wagon train creaks forward. Dust puffs under every hoofbeat. You'll miss paved roads, you realize, and chairs, and toilets, and beds. You'll miss milk, and privacy, and not having to cook in sideways wind. But, most of all, you'll miss the simple illusion of being prepared. Because as your wagon wheels crunch over the first mile of prairie, the truth begins to settle in your gut like bad jerky. Nothing you packed can save you from what's coming. And you're not even out of Missouri yet. The sun beats down as you hold the reins and try to look like you know what you're doing, but everyone else is faking it too. This is not a heroic expedition. It's a slow, grinding lesson in humility. You are not the first to think you had it all figured out. You won't be the last to be wrong. Your boots are already rubbing blisters on your heel, and the canvas. Overhead flaps a rhythm that might as well be the tick of your personal countdown clock. A boy behind you shouts that a wheel is squeaking. Someone's cow is wandering off into a creek. A woman yells to stop, already half panicked, and you realize that no one knows what they're doing. Not really. The guidebook said 5 months, but it never said how long 5 months really feels when you're being pulled across a continent by animals who would rather eat grass than move forward. Still, the trail rolls out in front of you, a thin line across an ocean of grass, and for better or worse, you're on it now. The trail stretches ahead like a drawn-out dare, a dusty ribbon overlaid on an ancient land that doesn't care if you succeed or fail. You're barely a day into the journey, and already your thighs ache from the walking. Your hands are raw from gripping the reins, and your nose is sunburnt despite the wide-brimmed hat you thought looked so dashing back in town. You tell yourself it's just the adjustment phase. That's what everyone says. But no amount of optimism hides the fact that a single mile feels like 10 when you're responsible for a ton of lumber, 4 oxen, 2 children, a whining dog, and a week's worth of trail gossip about dysentery. You'll get used to the smell, they said, of manure, sweat, stale biscuits, and human discomfort. Maybe. But so far, every breath feels like licking a sun-baked fence post. The pace is maddeningly slow. 20 miles a day on a good day, which this is not. More like 10 if someone gets a nosebleed, or the oxen decide to have an existential crisis in the middle of the trail. You measure time not in hours, but in creek crossings, in rutted hills, in how many times you've eaten beans since sunrise. And then there's the noise, constant creaking from the wagon axles, a steady chorus of groans, barks, and curses from your fellow travelers, metal pots clanging against the sides of the wagon, children squabbling over nothing, a wheel that squeals with each revolution like a dying mouse. There is no silence on the trail, only pauses between problems. You fantasize about stopping at a pleasant inn or eating a meal not made entirely of dried meat and hardtack. But inns don't exist here, and any meat softer than jerky has either been shot recently or is still running. Speaking of which, you try hunting for the first time on day 2. You borrow someone's flintlock stalk a squirrel with the focus of a starving cat, and miss by a country mile. The squirrel, unbothered, continues its nut gathering. You, thoroughly embarrassed, go back to gnawing dried apples. Trail food is a mixed bag, mostly because it comes in bags. Flour, cornmeal, bacon slabs wrapped in cloth and coated with salt to delay the inevitable decay. Coffee, though, you treasure that, even when it tastes like boiled saddle leather. A warm tin cup of bitter brew is the only thing keeping you from turning this wagon around and heading back to civilization. You've already learned not to drink from the wrong streams. That mistake cost you a full afternoon in the bushes, and the vague suspicion that you may now be part tapeworm. Historians still argue whether trail guides oversold the ease of access to clean water, or whether it was simply human optimism that led so many to assume that every creek was a mountain spring, waiting to refresh them. It was not. You quickly learn the term alkali water, which is a polite way of saying, drink this and evacuate your soul. Oxen fare no better. You watch your lead ox, whom someone named Daisy wade into a river and immediately refuse to come out. It takes 5 grown men, 6 curses, and 1 carrot to coax her back onto dry land. Another wagon nearly tips during the crossing, and a barrel of flour bursts open like a cloud of funeral dust. It drifts downstream, while a child wails about how they were saving that for dumplings. Rivers are the enemy, but so is land. So are wheels. So is time. You start marking days by disasters. Day 3, a wheel spoke splinters. Day 4, someone accidentally shoots their foot. Day 5, your neighbour's child eats an entire block of lye soap and vomits purple for 6 hours. You begin to wonder whether anyone actually makes it to Oregon, or if it's just a legend to keep Midwesterners hopeful. Every evening, you circle your wagons, not for defence really, but for convenience. The circle becomes the kitchen, the dining room, the campfire pit, the meeting place. It's where you gather to swap stories, complain about the oxen, and pretend this was a good idea. You meet a woman who claims she once crossed the Sierra Nevada in snowshoes, and a man who insists his grandfather rode a bear into St. Louis. You learn to take most stories with a pinch of salt pork. Still, the evenings are oddly magical. Stars blaze overhead in a sky so clear it feels painted. Coyotes howl in the distance, their voices more curious than threatening. The fire crackles. Someone strums a banjo with fingers calloused from rope and rifle. You fall asleep to the scent of pine smoke and the distant rhythmic chewing of oxen. But sleep is brief, and the mornings slap you awake with dew, frost, or mosquitoes, depending on the mood of the prairie. You drag yourself from beneath a moth-eaten blanket, blink at the dawn light, and contemplate the meaning of hardship as you stumble toward the communal latrine, which is a generous term for designated bush near that big rock. Breakfast is usually mush. Sometimes it's mush with molasses. If you're lucky, mush with a slice of overcooked bacon. Then it's time to grease the axles, check the yokes, and start again. Your boots are giving you blisters, but you tell yourself that's just your feet toughening up. Your neighbour is not doing so well. He's developed a rash, possibly from poison ivy, possibly from despair. A child gets stung by a bee and declares they are dying. Another discovers a rattlesnake and decides it's a pet. You try to appear unshaken, but deep down, you miss the relative predictability of sidewalks. The monotony of the trail starts playing tricks on your mind. You see the same tree 6 times and start to suspect the oxen are walking in circles. The landscape doesn't change much, just tall grasses, rolling hills, and the occasional grove of cottonwoods offering a brief spell of shade and bugs. Some days are windless, the heat baking the trail into a cracking crust that flakes under your boots. Other days, wind whips grit into your face until your teeth crunch with prairie sand. One woman in your party invents a headscarf using undergarments, prompting much laughter and some admiration. Everyone smells bad. This is not an insult. It's just a neutral observation. Soap is used sparingly. Water is rationed. You wash only what must be washed. No one is attractive anymore. You reach the first river ferry after a week and learn it will cost extra. The ferryman looks like he hasn't smiled since the Monroe administration and charges per wagon, per animal, per ounce of suspicion. You negotiate badly. He makes you wait 6 hours behind 3 other families and a man transporting nothing but barrels of pickled eggs. You eventually cross, but not before your wagon nearly tips again, and the dog decides to swim halfway back to shore before changing its mind. You start a journal, but by day 10, the entries consist mostly of still alive and beans again. You're grateful for the moments of levity. A boy riding an ox like a pony. A girl who thinks sagebrush is a vegetable and tries to cook it. A woman who starts writing satirical poetry about wagon wheels. But the underlying exhaustion never leaves. Your muscles ache in new ways every day. Your back feels like an old barn door. You walk more than you ride, and when you do ride, every bump sends a jolt through your spine like you're being punished. For ambition. You begin to miss things you never thought about before. The clink of glassware, the softness of linens, the sound of rain on a proper roof. And then, around day 12, you meet your first grave marker. A simple wooden board. No name, just baby and a date. Someone left a doll nearby. Your party falls silent. The trail reminds you that it's not a game, not a novelty, but a path paved in hardship and loss. And you still have months to go. By now, the novelty of the Oregon Trail has evaporated like morning dew under a pitiless prairie sun, leaving behind only the baked, cracked reality of your choice. Each morning, you wake up stiffer than the last, your joints creaking in sympathy with the wagon. Even your dreams are filled with oxen, wheels, and the rhythmic clatter of iron-rimmed wooden death traps rolling over uneven ground. You miss silence. You miss comfort. You miss not being covered in a thin sheen of trail dust that seems to crawl into your very pores, leaving you with an all-day taste of grit and regret. Today, you trudge along behind your wagon for what feels like a year and a half. Your boots, previously a proud piece of town craftsmanship, have split at the seams, and your homemade repairs, twine and sheer optimism, aren't holding up. You step on a sharp rock, mutter something PG-13 under your breath, and keep walking. The child walking beside you, holding onto the corner of the wagon for support, asks you for the 5th time if Oregon has candy. You lie because you have to. Yes, Oregon has candy trees, you say. They grow next to the milk rivers. It buys you 10 minutes of peace. Ahead, the trail turns rocky. The wagon lurches and groans as it climbs a minor incline that feels like Everest when you're this tired. One of the oxen coughs. You didn't know oxen could cough. A seasoned traveller near you squints at the beast and mutters something about lung rot. You pray it's just dust. You can't afford to lose an animal. You can't afford anything. The group you travel with functions like a loosely organised village on wheels. You've got your loudmouths, your quiet thinkers, your drama magnets, and your peacemakers. And then there's that one guy who insists on playing the harmonica every evening, regardless of the mood. Historians still argue whether trail musicians were morale boosters or psychological warfare. It probably depended on the tune. The harmonica guy only knows 4, and none of them well. At noon, you reach a shady grove where you pause to water the oxen and boil coffee over an open flame that smokes like a chimney in January. You sit on a rock that may or may not be alive. Honestly, everything on this trail feels sentient. And eat a lunch of dry bread and even drier wit. Someone jokes that they miss prison food. Someone else deadpans, at least prison has walls. Laughter ripples through the group. It's not joy. It's the release valve of shared misery. Afternoon brings a dust storm. Not the cinematic kind with spinning vortexes and high drama. Just wind. Relentless wind that lifts the trail dust and flings it in your face, your eyes, your ears, your dinner. You pull a scarf over your mouth and feel like an outlaw. If outlaws were really into sneezing and blinking furiously. The oxen lower their heads and plod forward, indifferent to your suffering. They are the true masters of this trail, and you their tired, dust-coated servants. That night, you finally take inventory of your dwindling supplies. Beans, still plentiful. Flour, suspiciously lumpy. Bacon, 1 slab left, fuzzy around the edges. Coffee, worth more than gold. You eye the remaining salt pork and try not to imagine it as a brick of disease. Someone recommends soaking it in vinegar, which you don't have. You try boiling it instead. It doesn't help. Still, you eat. You always eat. The food is not for joy, but for survival. Every calorie is an investment in forward motion. Later, that week, your party stumbles upon a trail marker, an old signpost carved with the words, Fort Laramie, 20 miles. Spirits lift. A fort means rest. A fort means resupply. A fort means people who don't smell like you. The next 2 days are a push. You wake before dawn and walk until your legs buzz like beehives. You pass other travelers along the way, a group of German immigrants singing hymns, a Mormon family pushing a handcart, a lone trapper who smells like bear and possibly is one. You share firewood and rumors. You hear tales of cholera up ahead, of missing wagons, of bandits. You keep walking. Fort Laramie is a collection of low buildings huddled behind a crude palisade. Not the shining beacon you imagined, but it has dry goods, a blacksmith, and barrels of clean water. You nearly cry at the sight of a real chair. You trade 2 pounds of coffee for fresh shoes. You barter a broken kettle for a small jar of lard. You consider selling your soul for a fresh apple, but settle for a turnip. Civilization tastes earthy. You sleep like the dead that night, albeit on the same lumpy ground, but with a full belly and the psychological salve of stationary walls. The next morning, it's back to the trail. Your group picks up a few new members, a recently widowed woman with steely eyes and a toddler named Bo, and an older man who introduces himself only as Pickle Jar Pete. No one asks. You press on towards South Pass, the halfway point of the journey and the first real glimpse of mountains. It's a gentle slope, not the jagged cliffs you feared, but the altitude gets to you. Breathing becomes shallower. The oxen move slower. You move slower. Time slows. You find yourself humming the harmonica man's tunes without realizing it, a sure sign of trail-induced madness. You start talking to the oxen. They do not respond, which is both rude and expected. You think back to your old life, warm beds, cold lemonade, neighbors who didn't argue about dung disposal, and you wonder how anyone could romanticize this experience. Historians still argue whether the popular trail narratives were fueled by marketing, mass delusion, or the sheer stubbornness of the human spirit. Probably a mix. Somewhere around Green River, you hit your first serious river crossing. It's deep, wide, and fast. There's no ferry this time. You must cork the wagon and float it across like a giant coffin on an aquatic dare. You coat the seams with pitch, say a prayer to whichever gods govern buoyancy, and shove off. The wagon creaks and sways. Water sloshes inside. Your boots fill up. The oxen paddle with all the grace of panicked cows. But somehow, miraculously, you make it, only to find out that 2 other families did not. Their wagons tipped, and they lost everything. No lives, thankfully. Just goods. Still, a sobering reminder. The trail giveth, the trail taketh, and sometimes it just watches you flail. That night, you light a fire and stare into the flames until your eyes blur. The stars above are indifferent. The wind whispers stories you can't quite understand. A coyote yips in the distance, as if laughing. You roll over and press your face into the blanket, hoping tomorrow is just a little bit kinder. But the trail doesn't deal in kindness, only distance. You're a speck on a map, a line in someone else's journal. But you're still moving. You're still here, and Oregon is somewhere out there, shining, distant, possibly mythical. But you'll keep going, because the only way off this trail is forward. The days blend into each other, an endless sequence of aching limbs, creaking wheels, and skies that seem to mock you with their boundless indifference. You've come far enough now that your former life feels like a half-remembered dream. The kind you can't quite grasp but leaves you oddly homesick. As you trudge onward, the horizon shimmers with heat, a wavering mirage of promise that never gets closer. The trail snakes onward through scrubby land, dotted with dry bushes and rocks that serve no purpose other than to trip you when you're not paying attention. Your hands are calloused, your face sun-worn, and your spirit, well, it's somewhere between stubborn and numb. This stretch of the Oregon Trail brings you into what is generously called the high plains, though high and plains both feel like lies. The elevation taxes your lungs in subtle ways, and the land, far from being plain, is a chaotic mess of hills, sudden gullies, and awkward inclines that demand more from your oxen than you'd like to give. You worry about them often now. Their ribs are showing, and their plodding gait has lost the steady rhythm you once counted on. You name them just to feel less detached. Big Nose, Mudfoot, Daisy, and one you jokingly call Lunch, though no one laughs anymore. Around you, the mood in the wagon party fluctuates with the weather and the quality of the meals, both of which are mostly disappointing. People bicker more now, over missing flour sacks, over whose turn it is to cook, over whose child stepped, on whose child. One man storms off on foot in a fit of trail rage, declaring he'll find his way solo. He's back by nightfall, limping and sheepish. No one speaks of it again. The rhythm of travel has become almost ritualistic. Wake before the sun. Boil water if you have any. Repack the wagon with grim efficiency. Walk beside the beasts. Try not to trip. Try not to think. Midday is when most mishaps happen. The heat makes tempers short and judgment shorter. One wagon breaks a wheel trying to ford a shallow creek. Another gets stuck in mud that looked dry from the ridge. You help pull. You grunt. You curse. You sweat. Everyone gets filthy. That evening, you eat biscuits baked directly on hot rocks. They taste like dust and regret. You chew them slowly anyway. Your jaw sore from the constant grind of hard food and harder days. And yet, despite it all, some part of you adjusts. You start to recognize landmarks, not because they're scenic, but because they mark the edge of survival. That oddly shaped boulder that looks like a pig. It means you're halfway to the next river. That patch of burned trees. Someone's campfire got out of hand last year, and now it's a reminder not to be that person. As you press on, into Wyoming territory, you pass Independence Rock, a massive granite dome rising inexplicably from the plains. Travelers have etched their names into its surface. 1,000 ghostly signatures screaming, "I was here," in the most desperate handwriting imaginable. You carve your own name too, a quiet, exhausted gesture of hope. Historians still argue whether Independence Rock functioned more as a marker of morale or just a giant pioneer guestbook. Either way, it's a turning point. You are over halfway now, and the trail has taken its toll. Illness begins to creep into your party like a shadow. Someone has a fever that won't break. Someone else coughs blood. You've heard whispers of dysentery, but no one says it aloud. To name the illness is to invite it in, like an unwanted dinner guest. You pass a makeshift grave marked only by a crude wooden plank. No name, just Mother. The earth is freshly turned, and wildflowers grow around it, as if mocking the sorrow below. You avert your eyes. Everyone does. You keep moving. Hunger begins to feel like a permanent companion. Not just a sensation, but a second self. A dull ache that's always present, always murmuring. Your rations are down to hardtack and whatever you can catch, which, given your lack of hunting skills, means you've become very familiar with squirrel. Squirrel stew, squirrel jerky, mystery meat that everyone just quietly agrees is probably squirrel. And if you're very unlucky, boiled leather. It's exactly what it sounds like. A chewy, boot-flavored delicacy. Meanwhile, the trail itself seems to develop a sense of humor. You're crossing a relatively flat stretch when out of nowhere, a wheel cracks in half. Not from any visible stress, just years of wear deciding to culminate now. You haul out the eye, spare, but it's warped. The blacksmith back at Fort Laramie swore it would hold just fine, which apparently meant until your darkest hour. You and 3 others spend an entire day in the heat, fixing it with timber from a dead tree and nails repurposed from a broken crate. It works. Kind of. You ride with a slight tilt now, like a permanently skeptical eyebrow. Water is the next. Crisis. The trail follows river valleys when it can, but these rivers are capricious. One day, they're full and gurgling. The next, they've dried to a trickle. You fill barrels when you can, but it's never enough. You learn to drink from your cupped hands, to conserve sips like they're gold. One traveler tries digging a well. It collapses. He's fine. His dignity is not. To lift spirits, the harmonica man tries a new song, something jaunty. It doesn't help. Spirits remain firmly earthbound. Still, you appreciate the effort. One night, during a particularly cold evening, someone tells a ghost story about a phantom wagon that appears only to travelers who've given up hope. It rides silently beside your own, pulled by skeletal oxen, driven by a woman in a tattered sunbonnet. They say if you look her in the eye, you won't make it to Oregon. No one laughs. You all check the shadows twice before bed. The next morning, you hear about a family ahead of you whose wagon caught fire from a cooking accident. They lost everything. A child's toy doll, melted into a puddle of wax and ash, lies on the side of the trail. You don't speak as you pass. There's nothing to say. And yet, against all odds, the trail keeps pulling you forward. The landscape begins to shift again. Rolling hills give way to deeper valleys and more dense clusters of trees. You're entering the rougher part of the journey now, where the terrain will fight you with every step. But there's a strange kind of comfort in routine. You wake, you walk, you eat, you fix what breaks, and then you sleep. The human mind, it turns out, is wildly adaptable. The trail doesn't get easier. You just get harder to break. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real story here. Not one of heroes or manifest destiny, but of ordinary people doing deeply uncomfortable things for an uncertain future. You wonder what future historians will say about you. Will they see courage, desperation, or just blind hope? Historians still argue whether these pioneers were adventurers or victims of circumstance. You suspect the truth is both. For now, you shift your sore shoulders, adjust the canvas flap on the wagon, and keep going. Oregon is out there, and so are you. The terrain begins to grow steeper as you approach the foothills of the Rockies, a grim reminder that the trail's toughest challenges lie ahead. You wake up to a chill in the air that wasn't there yesterday, and your breath fogs in front of you like a ghost trailing your every move. The sun rises slowly, struggling to warm the rugged slopes that tower over your camp. You pack up with more deliberate care, because every ounce of gear feels heavier on inclines that seem designed to sap your willpower. The oxen grunt in protest, their legs wobbling as they pick their way along rocky paths barely wide enough for the wagons. Each step is a careful negotiation with gravity, the wagons rocking precariously on their wheels like drunk sailors on an endless sea. You try to steady your nerves, reminding yourself that countless others have crossed this very ground. But it's hard not to feel like you're the first to face such daunting slopes. Your hands are slick with sweat, even in the cold, from gripping the reins too tightly. Sometimes you glance back at the endless line of wagons stretching behind you, a snaking convoy of human hope and stubborn endurance. The sight is oddly comforting. At least you're not alone in this struggle. As you press upward, the air thins. You notice the way the trees change. Tall pines replace the scrub brush, their needles sharp and fresh in the mountain breeze. The scent is a balm after the dust and sweat of the plains, though it's bittersweet because it reminds you how far you have left to go. The cold bites harder now, creeping into your bones. You pull your coat tighter, the fabric worn thin and frayed at the edges. The trail narrows here, forcing wagons to proceed one at a time. There's a quiet tension in the line as you wait your turn, ears straining for the sounds of trouble ahead. You overhear a conversation about the infamous South Pass, the relatively gentle mountain crossing that pioneers prize as a rare mercy. Some say it's still a long way off, others claim it's just around the bend. Historians still debate whether the fame of South Pass was a deserved beacon or a pioneer-era marketing gimmick to encourage westward migration. As you finally approach the steeper section, the wagons slow to a crawl. You dismount and lead your oxen on foot, the rocky path unforgiving to tired hooves. At one point, Your foot slips on loose gravel, and you catch yourself just before falling, heart pounding. You laugh quietly at your own clumsiness, proof that exhaustion has dulled your reflexes. Your fellow travelers share similar tales, and there's a subtle camaraderie in these small missteps. One older man tells you about his first attempt to cross the mountains, decades ago, when he was young and foolish. His story includes a near-fatal mishap with a runaway wagon and a stubborn mule named Blister. The story has a gentle humor, a rare light moment in the relentless grind of the trail. You tuck it away, a mental talisman against despair. Water is scarce now, and the creeks you find are often just trickles running over stones, barely enough to wet your parched lips. You dip your canteen in hesitantly, worried about contamination but desperate enough to ignore caution. The taste is bitter, but you swallow anyway. Hunger gnaws at your stomach with increasing urgency. The meager rations you've been conserving are now dangerously low. You consider sending a small party ahead to Fort Bridger for supplies, but everyone is reluctant to risk the unknown. Instead, you make do with boiled roots and dried meat scraps that taste like cardboard but somehow sustain you. You overhear a woman whispering about the cholera, an illness that's been making the rounds in the settlements back east. The mere mention sends a shiver down your spine. You've heard stories of whole families wiped out overnight by this invisible killer, but you hope it stays far from your party. Historians still argue whether cholera's spread along the Oregon Trail was due more to contaminated water or overcrowded campsites. Your thoughts drift to the children in your group. Some still laugh, chasing each other between wagons, oblivious to the dangers surrounding them. Others are quieter, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and fatigue. You try to imagine what this journey looks like through their eyes. A long, dusty nightmare with brief moments of wonder when they catch sight of wildflowers or a soaring hawk. Your own sense of time warps. Days blend into nights, and the trail becomes a rhythm you both dread and depend on. One afternoon, a sudden thunderstorm rolls in, dark clouds blotting out the sun and sending a shiver through the group. You scramble to cover supplies, secure tents, and shield the animals from the downpour. The rain pounds the earth in an unrelenting rhythm, washing away some of the trail dust but creating deep, slippery mud that traps wheels and feet alike. Lightning crackles overhead, and you share uneasy glances with your companions. The storm forces everyone to hunker down, and the usually restless chatter gives way to silence, broken only by the patter of rain and occasional animal cries. By nightfall, the sky clears, revealing a tapestry of stars so bright it almost makes you forget the hardships of the day. You lie awake in your tent, listening to the night sounds, the distant howl of a coyote, the rustle of branches, your own steady breathing, and for a moment, you feel a fragile peace. The mountains around you stand as silent guardians, ancient and indifferent. You realize how small you are in this vast wilderness, a single thread in a tapestry woven by countless travelers before you. The trail has tested your body and spirit, but it has also given you something unexpected: perspective. You wonder what stories you will tell when you finally reach Oregon. Will you speak of the hardships, the fear, the exhaustion? Or will you focus on the small moments of grace, the laughter of children, the kindness of strangers, the beauty of a sunset over the Rockies? Historians still debate what truly motivated the Great Migration west. Was it hope, desperation, or something deeper and harder to define? You suspect it was a mix of all three. As you drift to sleep, the distant howls carry a haunting lullaby, a reminder that the wildness of the land is never far behind. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but for now, you rest, wrapped in the quiet embrace of the mountains. You awaken to a pale light filtering through the thin canvas of your tent, the mountains still looming like ancient sentinels watching over your restless group. The air feels thinner here, each breath a reminder that you're climbing higher, into the Rockies, where oxygen is a scarce luxury. Your legs ache from yesterday's climb, muscles screaming in protest every time you try to stand without wobbling. You step outside and immediately notice the scent of pine needles and damp earth mingling with the faint aroma of campfire smoke. The trail ahead is slick with last night's rain, the mud clinging stubbornly to your boots as you carefully make your way to join the others. Around you, the camp is slowly stirring, wagons creaking, oxen lowing softly, and murmurs of tired greetings exchanged as people prepare for another grueling day. Breakfast is a haphazard affair. Whatever dry biscuits and cold coffee can be mustered, eaten quickly before setting off again. You remind yourself not to linger. Every minute wasted is a minute less progress, and the mountains won't wait. Today's section of the trail is infamous. Narrow ledges cut into sheer rock faces, where one misstep means a long, uncontrolled tumble down. You can't help but imagine what it would be like to lose your footing here. The heart-stopping plunge, the frantic scramble to grab a root or a rock. Your mind briefly drifts to tales you've heard about pioneer accidents, some fatal, some narrowly avoided. It's oddly comforting to know you're not alone in this vulnerability. Everyone here carries their own fears, masked behind forced smiles or quiet determination. As you trudge forward, the sound of hooves striking stone echoes, sharply, punctuated by the occasional creak of wagon wheels adjusting to the precarious path. The trail hugs the cliffside so tightly that at times you can see the valley floor stretching out dizzyingly below, a tapestry of greens and blues far, far beneath your feet. The wind picks up, cool and sharp, whipping past your face and tugging at loose clothing. You pull your coat tighter, the fabric stiff with dried sweat and dust. You remind yourself not to look down too often, focusing instead on the trail just ahead, one careful step at a time. Mid-morning brings a brief respite as the path widens enough to allow wagons to rest and animals to graze. The group takes advantage, spreading blankets and pulling out whatever scraps they have left. You share a quiet moment watching the oxen, their steady chewing a reminder of the slow, relentless pace that has become the rhythm of this journey. Nearby, a man unwraps a small bundle of fresh herbs, an old family remedy to soothe stomach aches and restless nerves. You catch the faint scent of peppermint and chamomile and wonder at the blend of frontier medicine and superstition that keeps people going. Historians still debate how much early pioneers relied on traditional herbal knowledge versus the emerging medical practices of the 19th century. Children play nearby, their laughter ringing out against the rocky backdrop, a rare and precious sound that eases the weariness in your chest. You watch as one girl attempts to mimic a bird call, her cheeks flushed with exertion and delight. It's moments like these that remind you why this hardship matters. The hope of a new life, the promise of fertile lands and open skies. Resuming the climb, the trail narrows again, and you must help guide your wagon carefully around jagged rocks and fallen branches. The team works in quiet coordination, each person understanding the unspoken rules of mountain travel. You pass, an old inscription carved into a weathered rock, a pioneer's initials and date, faded but still legible. It's a small marker of human presence, a reminder that you're part of a long chain of travelers who have braved this route. You pause a moment, running your fingers over the rough stone, feeling connected to those who came before and those who will follow. The afternoon brings a sudden challenge. A landslide has blocked part of the trail, forcing the group to clear debris and create a makeshift path around the obstruction. You join the effort, shoveling loose dirt and pushing stones aside, muscles burning anew, but spirits bolstered by shared purpose. It's exhausting work, but necessary. Without these efforts, the journey would end here, stranded between mountains and the unknown. Later, as the sun begins to dip, you find a sheltered spot to camp for the night, the landscape softened by the golden light. Fires are lit, and the smell of cooking food mingles with the crisp mountain air. Stories are exchanged around the flames, tales of earlier travels, of lost loved ones, and the dreams that keep everyone moving forward. One old-timer recounts a legend of a hidden valley where pioneer spirits rest, a place where hardship ends and peace begins. You listen, half skeptical, half comforted by the thought. Historians still argue whether such legends were born of genuine folklore or crafted to soothe anxious hearts along the trail. As night falls, the The stars emerge in brilliant clusters, untouched by city lights. The Milky Way stretches overhead, a luminous river guiding weary travelers. You lie back on the hard ground, the chill creeping into your bones, and watch the sky in silent wonder. The vastness of the universe presses in gently, a reminder of how small and fleeting these hardships are in the grand scheme. You breathe deeply, the cold air filling your lungs, and for a moment, you feel a calm acceptance settle over you. Tomorrow promises more challenges, but also more stories, more connections, and more glimpses of the land that calls so many westward. You close your eyes. The echoes of the fires crackle and the distant calls of night creatures weaving a lullaby. The trail is still long, but you are stronger now, shaped by every step, every struggle, every quiet victory along the way. You rise before dawn, the first faint glimmers of light brushing the mountain peaks with soft pinks and golds. The cold air wraps around you like a thin sheet, and your breath clouds in little puffs as you step out of your tent. The camp is hushed, save for the low murmurs of early risers tending to animals and preparing for another day on the trail. The scent of damp pine needles and earth fills your lungs, mingling with the faint aroma of smouldering embers from last night's fires. You check your supplies, the weight of your pack a constant reminder that every item must earn its place. Food is precious, and you ration carefully, knowing the trail ahead offers few chances for replenishment. You watch the horizon as the sun breaks over the peaks, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across the valley. The light feels gentle, but carries an unspoken warning. The day will be long, and the terrain unforgiving. Today's leg of the journey takes you through narrow mountain passes where the path twists and turns unpredictably, demanding constant vigilance. You guide your wagon carefully along rocky ledges, the drop-offs dizzyingly steep, with only thin, safety rails fashioned from branches to guard against disaster. The oxen stumble occasionally on uneven ground, their heavy hooves slipping on loose stones. You offer quiet encouragement, patting their necks and murmuring reassurances as you steady the reins. Around you, other pioneers move with a cautious rhythm, the atmosphere tense but determined. Conversations are sparse, replaced by the steady sounds of wheels turning and animals breathing. Occasionally, you overhear a whispered concern about the weather, rumors of an approaching storm swirl, the sort that could trap the party in the mountains for days. Historians still debate how often such weather events truly affected the Oregon Trail, and how much they shaped migration patterns. You remind yourself not to dwell on the unknown. Focus must stay on the trail beneath your feet. At midday, the trail opens briefly into a small alpine meadow dotted with wildflowers that sway lazily in the mountain breeze. The sight feels surreal, after days of dust and rock, and you take a moment to breathe in the sweet sense of nature's brief reprieve. You share a simple lunch with your companions, hard bread, salted pork, and the occasional apple or piece of cheese saved from earlier settlements. It's a humble feast, but the shared meal lifts spirits, fostering a quiet sense of community. One traveler tells a story about a peculiar survival trick used by early mountain pioneers: pressing buffalo dung into makeshift cooking fires, a practice believed to impart a smoky flavor while preserving scarce firewood. You listen, fascinated by how necessity breeds strange customs, and you chuckle at the mental image of smoky dung fires wafting through camp. These odd anecdotes break the monotony and remind you that human ingenuity often shines brightest in hardship. The afternoon brings the challenge of a steep switchback climb that seems endless. You dismount, leading your oxen by hand to spare their weary legs the strain of pulling the heavy wagon uphill. Your muscles ache fiercely, but you push on, fueled by stubborn resolve and the thought of reaching the next resting point. Occasionally, you pause to catch your breath, your gaze drifting to the breathtaking vistas unfolding around you. The jagged peaks bathed in sunlight, the deep valleys veiled in shadow. The beauty is almost cruel, a stark contrast to the grueling effort required to traverse this terrain. You think about the thousands who have gone before you, each carrying their own hopes, fears, and dreams into the unknown. Historians still argue whether the romanticized images of pioneer bravery obscure the brutal realities faced daily on the trail. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. Late afternoon brings a sudden, sharp change in weather. Dark clouds gather quickly, blotting out the sun and sending a chill through the camp. You hurry to secure tents, lash wagons, and bring animals under shelter. The first drops of rain fall cold and heavy, soon turning into a downpour that soaks everything in minutes. Mud forms quickly, turning the trail into a slippery quagmire that threatens to trap wheels and hooves alike. The storm rumbles ominously, lightning flashing in the distance. You shiver despite your thick coat and find yourself hoping that the weather will pass quickly. Around the camp, voices rise and fall with anxiety and determination, neighbors helping, neighbors secure what they can. One woman shares a tale of a past storm that stranded her family for nearly a week, forcing them to ration dwindling supplies and rely on faith and sheer stubbornness. The story ends with a laugh, a testament to human resilience even in the face of nature's fury. You tuck it away as a comforting reminder that you too can endure what's ahead. As night falls, the storm begins to ease, leaving behind a fresh, clean scent that mingles with the damp earth and pine. The sky clears, revealing a tapestry of stars so brilliant they seem close enough to touch. You lie back on a makeshift bed of blankets, the sounds of dripping water and distant thunder fading into a soothing rhythm. Your thoughts drift between exhaustion and wonder, the vastness of the universe contrasting with the narrow, treacherous path you have walked. You feel a fragile peace settle over you, a brief moment of calm amid the relentless journey. Tomorrow will bring new trials, but tonight, under the watchful gaze of the mountains and stars, you allow yourself to rest. The morning air greets you with a crispness that hints at early autumn, a welcome change from the humid dust of the plains. As you step out of your tent, you notice the ground glistening with dew, each blade of grass sparkling like tiny jewels under the waking sun. The camp stirs slowly. The clatter of cooking pots and the murmur of voices blend with the gentle rustling of leaves overhead. You feel the familiar ache in your muscles from yesterday's climb, but also a sense of quiet accomplishment. The landscape. Around you is a patchwork of forest and open meadows, the trees starting to blush with hints of red and gold, signaling the approaching fall. You breathe deeply, savoring the cool freshness before the day's demands pull you back into motion. Breakfast is a modest affair. Coarse cornmeal porridge sweetened with a pinch of molasses, sipped alongside thin coffee brewed over the fire. The flavors are simple but sustaining, a reminder that survival often depends on making do with what little you have. As you prepare to break camp, you take stock of your supplies and the condition of your wagon, checking for any signs of wear or damage from the rocky trail. The oxen seem steady but tired. Their breaths are slow and heavy, and you whisper words of encouragement, knowing these beasts carry much more than mere weight. They bear the hopes of everyone traveling with you. Today's section promises gentler terrain, a welcome reprieve that allows the mind to wander even as the body presses forward. You find yourself thinking about the pioneers who carved this trail, their sweat and determination etched into every rock and ridge. The trail's history is layered with stories of hardship and hope, and you can almost hear the echoes of footsteps and wagon wheels from decades past. Historians still debate the exact routes taken by different groups, as shifting landscapes and scattered records leave much to interpretation. You pass a small creek, its waters clear and cold, tumbling over smooth stones. The sound is soothing, and you pause briefly to dip your hands and splash cool water on your face. A few others join you, sharing quiet smiles and nods of gratitude for this little gift of nature. Nearby, a woman carefully collects wild herbs, explaining to a curious child how indigenous people have used these plants for centuries to heal cuts, soothe stomachs, and ease fevers. You listen, intrigued by the blend of traditional knowledge and pioneer innovation that shaped frontier medicine. As you resume your journey, the trail winds through dense groves of aspen and pine. The sunlight filters through the leaves, casting dappled shadows that dance on the ground beneath your feet. The air carries a faint scent of pine resin and earth, grounding you in the present despite the lingering weariness. Around you, the occasional bird call punctuates the quiet, adding to the sense of being deep in a living, breathing wilderness. You spot a small cluster of wild berries, their bright colors a tempting snack, but you resist. Food is too precious to waste on uncertain treats. Instead, you make a mental note to watch for these later, when you might have more time to safely forage. Midday brings a surprise. A small group of friendly traders traveling east, their wagons lighter and their pace brisker. They share news from settlements ahead, tales of upcoming towns where fresh supplies and warm beds await. You exchange greetings and barter a few items, trading dried meat for fresh eggs, and you feel a brief spark of hope ignited by the promise of civilization not far off. One trader offers a curious piece of advice. When crossing certain river sections, it's best to travel after sunset to avoid the worst of the currents and snake encounters. You file this tidbit away, amused and wary at once. As you press on, the trail skirts the edge of a broad valley, revealing stunning views of rolling hills and distant mountains dusted with snow. The sight is breathtaking, but you keep your attention on the path. A misstep here could mean a twisted ankle, or worse, a serious setback in this delicate journey. Your thoughts drift to the pioneers' diverse backgrounds. Farmers, tradespeople, families, all united by the dream of a better life. You wonder how many of them shared your quiet fears and moments of doubt. Historians still argue whether the Oregon Trail was primarily a route of economic opportunity or a forced migration driven by social pressures and governmental policies. This ambiguity adds depth to your understanding of the trail, painting a complex picture beyond simple pioneer heroism. The afternoon light softens, and the air cools as shadows lengthen. You arrive at a natural spring, a known camping spot marked by weathered signs and the remnants of old fire pits. The group sets, up quickly, eager to rest before nightfall. You take time to clean your gear, wash the grime of the trail from your hands, and share a quiet conversation with a fellow traveler about the strange foods and customs encountered along the way. One shares a tale of a peculiar meal involving roasted prairie dogs, which pioneers once turned to when other game was scarce, a culinary adventure not soon forgotten. Laughter bubbles up, lightening the mood and reminding everyone that humor is a vital companion on long journeys. As dusk settles, you settle near the fire, watching the flames flicker and listening to the soft crackle. The sky shifts through shades of pink and purple, stars emerging like scattered diamonds. The quiet brings a sense of peace, even as the trail ahead looms long and uncertain. You feel a deep gratitude for these small moments of respite, knowing they fuel your strength for whatever comes next. As you lie down to sleep, the familiar sounds of the wilderness lull you into a gentle rest. The whisper of the wind through the trees, the distant hoot of an owl, and the soft breathing of those around you weave a comforting tapestry. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but the morning light creeps softly over the horizon, painting the sky in gentle hues of lavender and peach as you slowly awaken. The crisp mountain air fills your lungs with a freshness that feels almost sacred after the dust and heat of the plains. You sit up, stretching sore muscles and listening to the quiet sounds of camp stirring around you. Low voices, the rustle of canvas tents, the occasional clink of metal as someone readies their breakfast. The day ahead promises to be different. The trail now follows a river valley known for its lush greenery and abundant wildlife. You pack your belongings methodically, aware that every ounce you carry matters, especially as the terrain ahead becomes more unpredictable. The oxen seem rested, their breath steady as they wait patiently, noses twitching at the sweet smell of morning grasses. The sound of flowing water draws your attention to the nearby river, its surface shimmering in the dawn light. You walk over, kneeling to cup the cold, clear water in your hands. The chill wakes your senses, and you savor the moment, feeling a connection to the countless travelers who have relied on this same source for survival. As you start moving, the wagon wheels crunch softly over damp earth and gravel, the rhythm a steady companion. The trees here are taller, their branches forming a canopy that filters the sunlight into gentle patches of warmth. Birds flit from branch to branch, their calls weaving a melodic backdrop to your journey. Occasionally, you catch sight of deer, grazing peacefully near the riverbank, their movements graceful and unhurried. You wonder what it must have been like for the indigenous peoples who lived in harmony with this land, long before your trek began. Their knowledge of the terrain, plants, and animals was profound. Wisdom often overlooked by settlers pushing westward. Historians still debate the extent to which native assistance influenced pioneer survival rates. But one thing is clear, the land holds stories layered with complexity and resilience. Mid-morning brings a brief halt at a well-known trading post nestled between the trees. It's a small clearing with a few rough cabins and a general store offering hardtack, dried, beans, and occasionally fresh bread. The atmosphere is quiet, subdued, a resting place more than a bustling hub. You trade some dried meat for a small bag of coffee beans and a few apples, the exchange bringing a modest cheer to the group. A friendly storekeeper shares tales of local legends, including a mysterious ghost wagon said to roam the valley on foggy nights, its wheels creaking with an eerie sound that sends shivers down the spine. You smile politely, but secretly enjoy the story's comforting strangeness. A touch of folklore to break the monotony of travel. The trail continues to hug the river, winding through patches of wildflowers and moss-covered stones. The soft murmur of flowing water calms your thoughts, helping you focus on the task at hand. You keep a watchful eye on the weather, remembering past warnings about sudden floods and the importance of timing river crossings carefully. The landscape changes subtly as you progress, with occasional rocky outcrops and steep banks demanding careful navigation. One fellow traveler recounts a bizarre technique used by early pioneers to cross swollen rivers, fashioning makeshift rafts from inflated buffalo hides. The idea sounds strange, almost comical, but it was a testament to human ingenuity and desperation in equal measure. You chuckle at the mental image, but also appreciate how such improvised solutions saved lives. As midday approaches, the sun breaks through a thin layer of clouds, warming the earth and drying patches of wet ground. You stop for lunch near a cluster of cottonwood trees, their leaves fluttering softly in the breeze. The meal is simple. Hardtack, softened with cold water, a few slices of jerky, and some dried fruit. But the company and scenery make it feel like a feast. Conversations drift toward memories of home, favorite foods, and hopes for the future. You share a quiet joke about the endless stream of odd survival tips passed down through the wagon trains, from chewing certain roots to ward off fatigue to sleeping with a knife under your pillow to keep bad spirits away. These stories are as much about camaraderie as they are about survival, weaving a tapestry of shared experience. The afternoon brings a gentle climb, the trail ascending gradually alongside the river. The effort is noticeable but manageable, and you take the chance to savor panoramic views of the valley below, ribbons of silver water cutting through a patchwork of green fields and distant forests. The beauty is humbling, a reminder of the vastness of the land you are crossing and the smallness of your own journey within it. Along the way, you spot signs of wildlife, tracks of elk in the mud, remnants of beaver dams along the banks. The presence of these animals speaks to the health of the ecosystem, a fragile balance that pioneers sometimes disrupted unknowingly. You think about the tension between progress and preservation, a theme that has echoed through history and continues to resonate. As evening falls, the group makes camp near a bend in the river, where tall grasses sway and the air cools rapidly. The day's exertions settle into a satisfying tiredness as you tend to the animals and prepare a modest meal. The scent of cooking meat mingles with wood smoke, and the soft chatter of fellow travelers creates a comforting background hum. Night descends slowly, stars emerging one by one in the clear sky. You lay back on a blanket, letting the sounds of the river and the wilderness lull you toward rest. The moon casts a silvery glow over the camp, and you feel a profound sense of connection to the land. to the people who came before, and to your own quiet resilience. The sky is still faintly painted with streaks of orange and purple as you awake, the air cool but promising warmth as the sun climbs higher. Today's journey begins with a gentle mist lingering over the river, wrapping the landscape in a soft veil that seems to hush the usual morning sounds. You step outside your tent, feeling the damp earth beneath your boots and the faint scent of pine and wet leaves filling the air. The wagon's wooden wheels creak softly as they adjust to the uneven ground, and the oxen nudge each other, restless but ready to move. The trail ahead meanders through a series of rolling hills, their slopes covered in thick grass and wildflowers that sway gently in the breeze. You pause to take it all in, knowing these quiet moments will soon be replaced by the steady demands of the road. As you prepare to set off, you consider the vast expanse of the Oregon Trail and the countless pioneers who have traveled this path, each with their own story etched into the landscape. You think about the immense logistical challenges they faced, maintaining food supplies, navigating treacherous river crossings, and managing illness without the comforts of modern medicine. The realities behind the romanticized notion of westward expansion are complex and often sobering. You recall hearing that some pioneers relied on unusual remedies, such as applying poultices made from animal fats and herbs, practices that today might seem odd, but were vital attempts to heal wounds and ease pain. Historians still argue whether such folk medicines genuinely aided recovery or if their effects were mostly placebo, but their use highlights the desperate creativity born from necessity. The trail climbs steadily, the sounds of nature growing louder as you ascend. Birds chirp energetically from the branches overhead, and the occasional rustle in the underbrush hints at small animals scurrying about. You spot a rabbit darting across the path, disappearing into the tall grass before you can get a closer look. The contrast between the wildness of this land and the human endeavor unfolding within it is striking. As you press forward, your mind wanders to the stories passed down by pioneers themselves, tales of perseverance, hope, and sometimes folly. One popular anecdote involves a man who tried to trade a live pig for a fresh horse, but ended up with neither. A humorous yet cautionary tale about bartering on the frontier. You smile to yourself, grateful for the light-hearted moments that balance the hardships of the journey. The trail bends sharply as you approach a narrow canyon, its steep walls looming overhead like silent sentinels. The path here is rocky and uneven, requiring careful navigation to avoid damage to the wagon. You slow your pace, guiding the oxen with gentle commands and steady hands. The canyon's cool shadows offer respite from the sun's growing intensity, and you breathe deeply, savoring the earthy scent of stone and sagebrush. You notice ancient petroglyphs etched into the canyon walls, symbols and figures carved by indigenous peoples long before your arrival. These marks speak of a rich cultural heritage and a deep connection to the land, reminding you that this trail has witnessed countless generations and histories. Later, as you emerge from the canyon, the landscape opens up to reveal a vast plain dotted with wildflowers and tall grasses. The sky is a brilliant blue, and the sun warms your skin as you continue onward. You stop to rest near a small spring, its waters crystal clear and inviting. A few travelers gather here, sharing stories and refreshing themselves. Among them is an elderly man who speaks softly of the changing seasons and the importance of respecting the land's rhythms, a perspective shaped by years of experience and quiet observation. As you eat a simple lunch of dried meat and bread, you reflect on the evolving relationship between humans and nature along the trail. The push for progress often came at a cost, yet moments like these reveal a shared appreciation for the beauty and bounty of the wilderness. The afternoon passes, with steady progress, the wagon rolling over gentle hills and through shaded groves. Occasionally, you catch glimpses of wildlife, deer grazing at a distance, squirrels darting between trees, and birds soaring overhead. The sounds and sights offer a soothing counterpoint to the physical exertion required to keep moving. You think about the pioneer families who traveled together, their bonds forged through shared struggles and hopes. Stories tell of children finding ways to entertain themselves, from inventing games to observing insects and plants, small diversions that helped pass long hours on the trail. Historians still debate the degree to which community support versus individual resilience determines survival rates on the journey west. As evening approaches, the sky softens to pastel shades, and the air cools once more. You find a suitable spot to camp, near a cluster of sturdy trees that offer shelter from the wind. The group works efficiently to set up tents, gather firewood, and prepare a modest meal. The smell of cooking food mingles with the fresh scent of the forest, creating a comforting atmosphere. Around the campfire, conversations drift to topics both serious and light-hearted. Tales of near misses with wildlife, unexpected kindnesses from strangers, and the quirks of frontier life. Laughter bubbles up, easing the tension and forging connections among travelers. As you settle down under a sky filled with stars, the gentle crackling of the fire and the chorus of nighttime creatures lull you toward rest. You feel the deep satisfaction that comes from meeting the day's challenges and the quiet anticipation of what tomorrow's trail will bring. The dawn breaks gently, casting a pale golden glow across the campsite as you awaken to the soft murmur of the river nearby. The air is cool and crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine needles. A fresh start after the trials of yesterday. You rise, feeling the lingering stiffness in your muscles, but also a renewed sense of purpose. The oxen stir slowly, their heavy breaths puffing small clouds in the morning chill. As you prepare your gear, you notice dew clinging to the leaves and blades of grass, sparkling like tiny jewels in the early light. Today's leg of the journey promises a mix of challenge and discovery as the trail leads through stretches of dense forest and open meadows. You gather with fellow travelers, sharing a quiet breakfast of coffee and hardtack, the simplicity of the meal grounding you for the road ahead. The chatter is low, respectful of the calm morning, but there's a shared understanding of the day's demands. Setting off, the wagon creaks and groans as it moves, the familiar sound a comforting rhythm against the backdrop of chirping birds and rustling leaves. The trail narrows here, hemmed in by towering trees whose branches form a dappled canopy overhead. Shafts of sunlight pierce through the foliage, illuminating patches of moss and wildflowers that carpet the forest floor. You breathe deeply, the pine-scented air invigorating your senses. As you navigate this verdant corridor, you notice signs of wildlife everywhere. Fresh tracks in the mud, the distant call of a hawk, and the sudden flash of a squirrel darting across the path. The presence of these creatures serves as a reminder that you are intruding, even if gently, on their ancient domain. Historians still argue whether early settlers fully appreciated the intricate ecosystems they were entering, or if their focus on survival blinded them to the environmental impact they would have. As the trail winds deeper into the woods, you come upon a small clearing where a solitary cabin stands, weathered and modest, with smoke curling lazily from its chimney. It's a trading post run by a family who've made a life here, isolated but self-sufficient. You stop briefly to exchange news and supplies, relishing the brief respite and human connection. The woman who manages the post shares stories of winters so harsh they sometimes lost entire livestock herds, and of summers when wild berries flourished, sustaining the community. You listen with a mix of admiration and envy, fascinated by their resilience and adaptability. The trail resumes its gentle ascent, climbing gradually through patches of wild raspberry bushes and stands of cedar. You feel the physical effort, but the natural beauty softens the strain. The sunlight filters through leaves painted with the subtle blush of early autumn, and the cool breeze carries the scent of earth and wood smoke. Midway through the afternoon, the group pauses by a small stream for a break. You kneel to drink, letting the icy water revive your parched throat. Nearby, wildflowers nod in the breeze, their delicate petals a riot of colour against the green backdrop. You recall a quirky fact you read once. Some pioneers believed that carrying a small piece of lodestone, a naturally magnetic rock, would protect them from getting lost. Whether superstition or early science, it highlights the mix of practical knowledge and folklore that accompanied the westward expansion. You chuckle softly to yourself and tuck a small pebble into your pocket, a talisman of sorts. As the day wears on, the forest gradually thins. opening onto rolling hills and grassy knolls. The sunlight grows warmer, casting long shadows and bathing the landscape in a soft golden glow. The scent of wild herbs drifts on the breeze, mingling with the faint aroma of burning wood from distant campsites. You marvel at the vastness stretching before you, the endless sky, the patchwork of fields and forests, the winding trail that disappears into the horizon. Conversations with your fellow travelers turn to hopes for the future. Land to settle, crops to plant, homes to build. There is an undercurrent of excitement tempered by the weight of uncertainty, the knowledge that many journeys end before they truly begin. As the sun dips low, the group searches for a suitable campsite. You find a sheltered hollow surrounded by tall grass and a scattering of wildflowers, perfect for pitching tents and gathering wood. The work is methodical. Pitching tents, collecting firewood, preparing dinner, each task a small victory in the face of the wilderness. The evening meal is simple but satisfying. Stew made from salted beef, a handful of dried vegetables, and thick slices of hard bread. Around the fire, voices soften, and laughter rises occasionally, creating a cocoon of warmth and companionship against the encroaching night. The stars emerge, twinkling faintly through a veil of clouds, and the scent of pine mingles with the cool night air. You lie back on your blanket, gazing upward, feeling both humbled and hopeful. Tomorrow, the trail will demand more from you, but for now, you rest, comforted by the rhythm of the land and the quiet strength of your fellow travelers. The morning light filters softly through the leaves, casting a dappled pattern on your tent as you awaken to the sounds of birdsong and the distant rustle of the wagon wheels beginning to turn. The air is cool and fragrant, carrying hints of earth and wildflowers, a gentle reminder of the untamed landscape surrounding you. You stretch, feeling the familiar ache of muscles eased by a restful night, and prepare for another day on the trail. Today, the path will take you through a series of open plains and wooded groves, offering both challenge and beauty in equal measure. As you break camp, the smell of fresh coffee mingles with the scent of damp earth, and the chatter of your traveling companions rises softly, filled with stories and plans for the day ahead. The oxen, steady and patient, are harnessed once more, their heavy hooves marking the rhythm of the journey. The trail ahead rolls gently upward, lined with tall grasses that sway in the breeze, and dotted with wildflowers in shades of purple, yellow, and white. You take in the wide sky overhead, a vast canvas painted in soft blues and wisps of cloud, and feel a deep sense of connection to this vast and ever-changing land. As you travel, you notice the delicate interplay of nature and human endeavor. The pioneers before you shaped this trail, carving a path through dense forests and rugged hills, leaving traces that still whisper stories of hope, hardship, and determination. You recall reading that some settlers used cairns, small stacks of stones, as markers to guide travelers, a practice borrowed from indigenous traditions. These humble monuments, though easy to overlook, served as vital beacons in an often confusing and perilous landscape. Historians still debate the extent to which such indigenous knowledge influenced pioneer navigation, but the signs of cultural exchange are undeniable. The trail winds past a quiet creek where the water tumbles over smooth stones, creating a soothing melody that blends with the rustling leaves. You pause briefly to cup the cool water in your hands, feeling refreshed and grounded. Nearby, you spot a cluster of wild berries, bright red and inviting. You resist the urge to snack, wary of the unknown, but the sight brings a small smile and a reminder of the land's generosity. As the sun climbs higher, the landscape shifts, the trees thinning to reveal rolling hills stretching into the distance. The air grows warmer, carrying the scent of sun-baked grass and distant smoke from other campsites. You sense the trails, subtle challenges, uneven ground, rocky patches and occasional steep climbs that test your endurance and attention. The wagon's wheels jostle over stones and roots, the familiar creak a soundtrack to your progress. Amid the physical exertion, moments of light-heartedness emerge. A fellow traveller recounts a story about a lost hat that took a comical detour down a hillside, only to be recovered by a curious fox. Laughter bubbles up, breaking the monotony and strengthening bonds among the group. The pioneer spirit, you realize, thrives not only on resilience, but also on humor and camaraderie. You think about the foods that sustained these travelers: dried meats, hardtack and beans, simple provisions that could endure long journeys but left much to be desired in flavor. Yet inventive cooks found ways to add zest, using wild herbs and forage plants to enliven meals. Historians still argue about how much variety these diets really had, especially in harsh seasons. But the ingenuity in the face of scarcity is clear. As afternoon settles, the trail leads you toward a ridge overlooking a vast valley. The view is breathtaking, a patchwork of fields, rivers, and forests stretching to the horizon under a wide open sky. You pause to take it all in, the moment both humbling and inspiring. The sense of scale, the sheer expanse of untamed wilderness ahead, fills you with awe and a quiet determination to press on. The descent into the valley is gentle, but requires care as the wagon navigates narrow paths bordered by wildflowers and tall grasses. The landscape is alive with activity, birds darting between branches, small mammals scurrying in the underbrush, and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. You note the richness of this ecosystem and the delicate balance that pioneers disrupted as they moved westward. As evening approaches, you reach a clearing by a small lake, its surface smooth and reflective like glass. The camp is set near the water's edge, providing a welcome source of fresh water and a peaceful setting for rest. The air cools, and the scent of pine mingles with the faint aroma of campfire smoke as wood is gathered and flames flicker to life. Around the fire, stories are shared, some factual, some embellished, but all woven with warmth and humanity. You hear tales of lost treasures, peculiar customs, and the simple joys of frontier life. A quiet camaraderie settles over the group, the shared experience knitting strangers into a temporary family. As night deepens, stars sparkle overhead, their light mirrored in the lake's still waters. The gentle sounds of nature, the lapping of water, the rustle of leaves, the occasional hoot of an owl, create a soothing soundtrack. You lie back on your blanket, the cool air brushing your skin, and let your thoughts drift. The hardships of the trail are many, but so too are the moments of beauty and connection that make the journey unforgettable. The first light of dawn seeps softly into your tent, stirring you awake with a gentle promise of another day on the trail. The air is crisp and fragrant, carrying the subtle scents of pine and damp earth, a familiar welcome after the quiet night. By the lake, you stretch carefully, easing the stiffness in your limbs, mindful that each movement is a reminder of the long road ahead. As you step outside, the campsite is already stirring. The muted sounds of morning preparations, whispers, the clinking of metal, and the soft murmurs of the river create a comforting symphony. You breathe in deeply, the fresh air filling your lungs and soothing your spirit. Today's stretch promises to be one of the more demanding ones, with rocky inclines and narrow passages testing your endurance and focus. The oxen seem ready, their patient eyes watching as you check harnesses and secure gear. As the wagons creep to life and the familiar rhythm of wheels and hooves resumes, you are reminded that the trail is as much a mental journey as a physical one. You find your mind wandering to the stories of those who came before you, the pioneers who faced similar trials with grit and quiet determination. You recall reading about the importance of wagon maintenance, how a broken axle or lost wheel could mean days or weeks of delay, sometimes worse if help was far away. Historians still debate how prepared most parties really were, but it's clear that adaptability was as vital as planning. The trail leads you through a dense stand of spruce trees, their branches heavy and whispering with the morning breeze. Shafts of sunlight filter through the canopy, casting long shadows and dappling the ground with shifting patterns of light and shade. The smell of pine resin mingles with the dampness of moss-covered stones and fallen needles, creating a heady, earthy aroma. You notice the crunch of dry twigs beneath your boots and the occasional call of a woodpecker echoing through the woods. The narrow path challenges the wagon's width, forcing careful navigation to avoid scraping bark or toppling. Small shrubs. As you round a bend, a sudden patch of wild strawberries catches your eye, ripe and bursting with colour. You pause, savouring a few, sweet and tangy, a rare treat on this arduous journey. A fellow traveller jokes about the berry detours that everyone secretly hopes for, adding a light moment to the otherwise focused trek. The mix of natural beauty and hardship keeps your senses alert and your spirits balanced. Later, the trail opens onto a sunlit meadow where wild grasses ripple, like waves in the gentle breeze. The vast expanse feels both freeing and intimidating, a reminder of the wilderness's immensity and your place within it. You take a moment to lie back on the soft grass, watching clouds drift lazily overhead and feeling the warmth of the sun on your face. The sounds here are different. Buzzing bees, chirping crickets, and the distant murmur of running water. It's a peaceful interlude, a brief respite that rejuvenates body and mind. You think about the daily routines that pioneers developed to survive these moments, how they rose early, rationed food carefully, and kept their gear meticulously. One quirky fact you remember is that some travelers believed in carrying small charms or trinkets for luck, ranging from carved wooden figures to bits of colourful fabric. Whether superstition or tradition, these items offered comfort amid uncertainty. As the afternoon progresses, the trail begins to climb steadily toward a ridge that promises sweeping views, but demands careful footing. The wagon lumbers upward, the oxen straining slightly but steady, muscles rippling under thick hides. You steady yourself against the sway, your hands gripping the wooden frame as you focus on each step. The path narrows, bordered by wildflowers and thorny bushes, some blooming with delicate white petals. The air grows cooler as you ascend, scented faintly with mountain herbs and pine needles. At the summit, you pause to catch your breath and drink in the panorama, a tapestry of valleys, rivers, and distant peaks etched against the sky. The view is humbling, a reminder of the vastness of the land and the smallness of your journey within it. You feel a mix of awe and accomplishment, knowing that this ridge marks a milestone on your trek westward. Historians still argue whether such high points were often celebrated by pioneers or viewed more pragmatically as obstacles to overcome. As the descent begins, the path becomes steeper and more rugged. You carefully guide the wagon, mindful of loose stones and hidden roots. The oxen pick their way cautiously, their hooves finding secure footing amid the uneven terrain. A sudden light rain begins, soft and warm, adding a fresh scent to the air but making the trail slick. You and your companions hasten your steps, laughter and light-hearted complaints breaking through the tension. The rain creates a rhythm against your hat and shoulders, soothing and steady, as the landscape shifts from mountain forest to a thick stand of alder and willow trees lining a small stream. The water gurgles happily over rocks, its coolness inviting. The group pauses here to refill water supplies and rest briefly. Around the fire, as evening falls, you share stories and plans, the glow of flames casting dancing shadows and a warm, amber light on tired faces. The day's trials blend with the comfort of camaraderie and the promise of rest. You reflect on the unpredictable mix of beauty and hardship that defines the trail, how moments of wonder and delight are often punctuated by challenge and discomfort. It's this delicate balance, you realize, that shapes the pioneer experience and leaves an indelible mark on those who make the journey. The sun rises slowly, casting a soft golden light over the campsite, and you awaken once more to the gentle sounds of the wilderness stirring around you. The cool morning air carries the subtle scents of damp earth and pine, mingled with the smoky residue of last night's fire. As you step outside your tent, the familiar rhythm of life on the trail begins anew. The soft murmur of voices, the clatter of breakfast preparations, and the low calls of the oxen awaiting their day's labor. You stretch and prepare yourself, mentally for the day ahead, knowing that each mile traveled brings new challenges and discoveries. Today, the trail will lead you through a patchwork of rolling hills and thick forests, a landscape both inviting and demanding. You watch as your fellow travelers secure gear and ready the wagons, their practiced movements smooth despite the ever-present dust and fatigue. The oxen, steady and patient, paw at the ground, their breath rising in soft puffs in the cool air. The path soon narrows, winding between towering evergreens whose needles whisper secrets in the breeze. You take note of the subtle changes in vegetation, the shift from broadleaf trees to conifers, the gradual increase in moss and lichen decorating bark and stones. The air grows noticeably cooler and fresher, carrying hints of mountain herbs and resin. As you trudge onward, you notice a curious cluster of mushrooms growing in a damp hollow. Some pioneers viewed fungi with suspicion, while others valued certain types as vital food sources. Historians still debate the extent to which mushroom gathering was common along the trail, but the presence of these forest treasures adds a touch of mystery to the landscape. A gentle laugh breaks through your thoughts as a companion recalls a tale about a settler who tried to dry wild mushrooms over a campfire, only to create a smoky spectacle that sent the entire camp coughing and waving away the pungent haze. The light-hearted story reminds you that, despite the hardships, moments of humor and human error are woven throughout the journey. The trail climbs steadily now, the incline soft but persistent, and the wagon creaks as it adjusts to the uneven ground. You steady yourself against the sway, feeling the tension in your arms and legs, but also a quiet satisfaction at your own endurance. Nearby, you spot a patch of wild raspberries, their rich red hue contrasting vividly with the deep green of surrounding leaves. You reach out to pluck a few, savoring the burst of sweetness, an unexpected luxury on the trail. The day's march is punctuated by these small rewards, nature's way of encouraging perseverance. As afternoon approaches, the landscape opens into a wide valley bathed in sunlight. The grass here is tall and golden, swaying gently in the breeze. You spot a family of deer grazing near the edge of the woods, their cautious movements graceful and serene. The quiet beauty of the scene invites a moment of reflection. You think about the settlers who traverse this land before you, each step a blend of hope and hardship. Their stories echo silently in the rustling grass and the distant hills. Historians still argue about the true impact of westward expansion on the native peoples and the environment, a complex legacy intertwined with progress and loss. You take a sip of cool water, feeling grateful for this moment of calm amid the constant motion. The trail winds toward a shallow river crossing, where makeshift bridges and fords mark the work of countless travelers. The sound of flowing water is refreshing, its coolness a balm after the day's heat. Crossing requires care. The slippery rocks and strong current test your skill and patience. The wagons roll cautiously, the oxen steady but wary. You steady your breath, focusing on balance and timing, relieved as you reach solid ground on the other side. Camp is set up nearby, a peaceful clearing surrounded by tall trees. The evening air is cool and fragrant with pine and wildflowers. Around the fire, conversation flows easily, stories shared with laughter and quiet moments of thought. You hear about curious pioneer inventions designed to ease life on the trail, from clever harness designs to makeshift bread ovens built from stones. These innovations, born of necessity and creativity, remind you that the journey is as much about adaptation as endurance. As night falls, the sky fills with stars, a brilliant tapestry shining above the trees. The crackling fire casts warm light on your companions' faces, the glow a beacon of comfort in the vast wilderness. You settle in, the day's weariness, mingling with a peaceful sense of accomplishment. The trail continues tomorrow, as it always does, unceasing, challenging, and full of quiet wonders. The gentle hum of dawn awakens you, the soft light filtering through the canvas of your tent, promising another day filled with slow steps and quiet determination. Outside, the scent of damp earth mingled with wildflowers drifts on the breeze, reminding you that even in the midst of hardship, the natural world offers small comforts. You pull on your boots, feeling the familiar weight of worn leather and the stubborn dust of the trail. The camp stirs to life as others prepare for the day's journey. Voices low but steady, the sound of axes chopping kindling, water boiling over fires, and oxen shifting in their harnesses, blending into a morning chorus. As you gather your belongings, your mind drifts to the challenges that lie ahead. Rough terrain, unpredictable weather, and the ever-present necessity of careful planning. Yet, there is a certain rhythm to it all, a balance between effort and respite that keeps your spirits buoyed. You set off as the sun climbs higher, the trail leading you through a dense thicket of birch and maple, their leaves whispering secrets in the light wind. The ground beneath your feet is soft with fallen leaves, cushioning each step and muffling the sound of the wagon's wheels. You notice a flash of color, wild blueberries bursting with summer sweetness, and pause to collect a handful, savoring the simple pleasure. The pioneers believed such finds were blessings on the journey, small rewards for perseverance and keen eyes. As you navigate a narrow ravine, the sound of rushing water grows louder. A babbling brook cuts through the forest floor, its clear water tumbling over smooth stones and mossy banks. You kneel to drink, the cold liquid refreshing and pure. Nearby, an old grist mill stands silent, its wooden wheel moss-covered and motionless. You think about how many settlers relied on such mills for grinding grain, a vital step in making daily bread. Historians still debate how accessible these resources truly were, with some accounts suggesting many pioneers had to carry their own grinding stones or barter for services. The trail then opens to a sunlit meadow dotted with wildflowers, their colours bright against the green grass. Butterflies flit lazily between blooms, and bees drone softly as they gather nectar. You inhale deeply, the scent of honeysuckle and clover mingling with the fresh breeze. A fellow traveller recounts a story of a settler who tried to start a beekeeping venture along the trail, only to be thwarted by curious bears and hungry raccoons. The laughter that follows lightens the mood, reminding you that humour often accompanies hardship. The afternoon brings a steady climb, the wagon creaking as it adjusts to the uneven ground. You grip the side rail, feeling the familiar ache in your arms and legs, but also a quiet pride in your resilience. The landscape shifts as you ascend. Oak trees give way to scrub brush and hardy pines, their needles releasing a sharp, invigorating scent. At the ridge's summit, you pause to catch your breath and drink in the expansive view. Rolling hills fading into the horizon, rivers weaving silver ribbons through the land. The panorama fills you with a sense of smallness and wonder, the vastness of the frontier, both humbling and inspiring. You think about the pioneers who ventured into these unknown lands, their hopes and fears mingling with the endless sky. As you descend, the path narrows and becomes rockier. The wagons move carefully, the oxen's sure-footed steps a steady reassurance. A sudden summer shower begins, warm and gentle, dappling the leaves and dusting the trail with moisture. The rain softens the earth, the smell of wet pine and fresh soil rising around you. You and your companions laugh and hurry to set up camp before the sky darkens further. That evening, as the rain patters on the tense canvas, you sit close to the fire, the flames dancing and flickering despite the dampness. Stories unfold, tales of strange weather, unexpected friendships, and the occasional mishap that becomes legend. You recall that some pioneers believed in carrying small charms for protection or luck, objects passed down or crafted with care. Whether superstition or tradition, these talismans offered comfort amid uncertainty. The stars slowly emerge behind, the thinning clouds, their quiet sparkle a gentle reminder of the vast, unchanging universe above your transient journey. The day's exhaustion settles in, mingling with a deep sense of peace. You close your eyes, the sounds of the rain and fire weaving a lullaby, and drift towards sleep, ready to face whatever tomorrow's trail holds. The first light of morning filters through the trees, casting long shadows that stretch across the dew-kissed grass. You stir beneath your blankets, the familiar sounds of camp life gradually rising, a low murmur of voices, the scrape of pans, and the gentle snorts of oxen preparing for the day ahead. Outside, the air is crisp, but carries a faint warmth, hinting at the promise of sunshine. You step out and breathe deeply, the earthy scent of wet leaves and pine needles mingling with the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from a nearby campfire. Today, the trail leads you toward a stretch known for its challenging river crossings and unpredictable weather, adding a layer of anticipation to your steps. You notice the soft rustle of leaves as a squirrel darts across the path. Its quick movements a reminder of the smaller lives that thrive alongside your journey. The path ahead winds through dense forests where towering cedars and firs create a cathedral-like canopy above you. The filtered light dapples the ground, creating shifting patterns that seem to dance with every step. Along the way, you spot delicate wildflowers clinging to the underbrush, bluebells, columbines, and tiny violets that add splashes of color to the green backdrop. These quiet details offer a welcome distraction from the trail's physical demands. As you trudge onward, you recall the early settlers' accounts of this region, where sudden storms could transform calm rivers into roaring torrents, catching many off guard. Historians still argue about how accurately these stories capture the frequency and severity of such weather events. But one thing is clear: preparation and respect for nature were essential survival skills. You pause at a bend to watch a family of ducks glide gracefully across a serene pond, their ripples spreading outward in slow, concentric circles. Nearby, a pioneer-built wooden bridge spans a narrow creek, its handrails worn smooth by countless hands over the years. Crossing carefully, you feel the steady sway beneath the wagon wheels, the sound of flowing water below mingling with the creak of wood and the low grunts of the oxen. Midday arrives with a burst of sunlight, warming your skin and brightening the trail. You find a shaded spot to rest and eat, the crunch of dried meat and hardtack contrasting with the sweetness of wild blackberries gathered earlier. Conversation drifts to the variety of foods pioneers carried: salted pork, beans, and the occasional treat like molasses or fresh fruit when available. Some settlers developed ingenious ways to stretch their provisions, including sun-drying, vegetables, and smoking fish, though historians debate the effectiveness and nutritional value of these methods. After the break, the trail climbs steadily, the terrain becoming rockier and more challenging. You steady your footing as you ascend, feeling the burn in your calves and the tightening of muscles long unused to such exertion. The oxen strain. With quiet determination, their steady pace a reassuring rhythm amid the uneven ground. The landscape shifts again as you reach higher elevations, the trees thinning to reveal scattered patches of wild sage and hardy grasses. The scent of pine resin and mountain air fills your lungs, refreshing and invigorating. At the summit, you pause to take in the expansive view, jagged peaks stretching into the distance, valleys blanketed in mist, and rivers glinting like silver threads below. This vista brings a deep sense of awe, the vastness of the land reminding you how small and fleeting your passage truly is. As you begin the descent, the trail becomes steeper and more precarious. The wagons jostle and sway, demanding careful navigation to avoid rocks and loose soil. You grip the side of the wagon tightly, muscles tense but focused. A sudden gust of wind whistles through the trees, carrying the distant call of a hawk. Near the bottom, you encounter a small encampment of Native Americans, their presence a reminder of the land's original stewards. The interactions are cautious but peaceful, with some trade of food and goods taking place. You recall that relationships between settlers and indigenous peoples were complex and varied widely, with historians still debating the extent of cooperation versus conflict in different regions. As evening falls, the camp settles once more, under a sky streaked with pink and orange. The fire crackles warmly, its light flickering against the faces of tired but content travelers. Stories unfold of past adventures, lessons learned, and hopes for the journey ahead. You listen, comforted by the shared experience and the quiet camaraderie of the trail. The stars emerge, clear and bright, a celestial blanket wrapping the world, in calm. You lie back, the day's exertions giving way to a peaceful tiredness, and drift gently into sleep, ready for whatever the next day will bring. You awake to the soft chorus of morning birdsong, their delicate melodies weaving through the cool air like a lullaby. The camp is stirring slowly. Blankets are folded. Tents are struck down with practiced efficiency, and the familiar creak of wagon wheels being readied signals the start of another day. You stretch your limbs, the stiffness from yesterday's climb still lingering, but softened by the gentle morning light. Today's stretch of the Oregon Trail promises a mixture of open prairie and rolling hills, landscapes that seem less daunting, but no less full of their own subtle challenges. As you gather your belongings and step outside, the aroma of sizzling bacon and fresh bread hints at the communal breakfast underway, a small luxury on this arduous trek. You savor a bite, knowing these moments of nourishment are as much about morale as sustenance. The trail ahead unfurls like a ribbon, golden under the rising sun, bordered by wild grasses swaying softly in the breeze. The warmth of the sun on your face feels comforting, and the sound of the wagons rolling steadily forward creates a soothing rhythm. You notice the delicate flutter of prairie butterflies, their wings patterned with intricate spots weaving through the air. The settlers often spoke of these small wonders as reminders of the beauty hidden amid hardship. As you walk alongside the wagons, you recall the stories of early pioneers who navigated this region, relying on landmarks such as distinctive rock formations and lone trees to guide their way. Historians still debate the accuracy and usefulness of the many hand-drawn maps and oral directions passed down through the years, some of which led to confusion and delay. The prairie's openness offers few places to hide from the sun, and midday heat can be relentless. You spot a cluster of buffalo grass waving gently, its silvery blades shimmering in the light. Nearby, a small herd of bison grazes quietly, their massive forms moving with surprising grace. The settlers viewed the bison as both a source of food and a symbol of the untamed wilderness, but overhunting and habitat loss would tragically decimate their numbers in the decades to come. As the sun climbs higher, you and your companions pause beneath a rare stand of cottonwoods, their leaves whispering softly in the breeze. You drink from your canteen, the cool water, a refreshing balm against the dry heat. Conversations drift to the daily routines necessary to survive, tending to livestock, repairing wagons, and maintaining a sense of hope despite the monotony. Some pioneers carried small books or journals, using the quiet hours to write or sketch, a practiced thought to soothe restless minds. You find yourself reflecting on the endurance required, both physical and mental, as the trail continues to stretch ahead. The afternoon brings a change in weather, with clouds gathering and a soft wind picking up, stirring dust along the path. Thunder rumbles faintly in the distance, a reminder that storms could arrive suddenly, turning dry dust into slippery mud. You prepare accordingly, securing tents and tarps, and watching as the first drops begin to fall, gentle at first, but growing steadily. The rain cools the air and washes the dust from your skin, creating a fresh, earthy scent. You recall that some settlers believed rain was a blessing, an answer to prayers for relief, while others worried about the difficulties it brought for travel and camp life. As the storm passes, a rainbow arcs across the sky, its colours vivid against the darkening clouds. You smile, the moment offering a brief respite from the rigours of the trail. Night falls quietly, the campfire crackling and casting warm light as stories are shared once more. You listen to tales of unexpected kindness from strangers met along the way, of simple pleasures like a hot meal after a long day, and the persistent hope that keeps everyone moving forward. The stars shine brightly above, their steady presence, a comforting constant in a world of change. You settle in, the exhaustion of the day gently pulling you towards sleep, the soft sounds of the night and the promise of tomorrow's journey lulling you into a restful calm. The first grey light of dawn creeps through the tent's thin fabric as you wake to the distant call of a whip-poor-will. You stretch, feeling the slight soreness in your shoulders and legs, a familiar reminder of the trail's steady demands. The camp stirs gradually, the soft murmur of voices and the gentle clatter of cooking pots blending with the rustle of leaves overhead. Today, the trail takes you into a region known for its dense woodlands and rocky outcrops, a change from the wide-open prairies you traveled yesterday. The air is cooler here, carrying the scent of pine resin and damp earth. You step outside and notice a thin layer of morning mist hovering over the ground, softening the landscape like a watercolor painting. As you prepare to move, you hear the faint tapping of woodpeckers in the distance, their rhythmic drumming a natural metronome to your thoughts. Walking beside the wagons, you observe the careful balance the pioneers maintained between progress and preservation. Trees are often marked with cuts or carvings, known as blazes, to guide travelers, but some worry that excessive marking might damage the forest's health. Historians still debate how much impact early settlers had on the ecosystems they traversed, with some suggesting it was minimal, while others argue their presence began a slow but irreversible change. The trail narrows here, forcing wagons to slow and pick their way carefully between roots and rocks. You hear the crunch of gravel underfoot and the occasional creak of wagon wheels struggling over uneven ground. Occasionally, small patches of wild berries and edible roots peek through the underbrush, offering tempting snacks if you dare to forage. Some settlers carried guidebooks describing local flora and fauna, but the accuracy of these texts varied widely. You remember a quirky tale of a pioneer who mistook a poisonous plant for an edible one, fortunately surviving with only a mild upset stomach, a cautionary reminder to always tread carefully in unfamiliar territory. Mid-morning brings a clearing, where the sunlight spills like liquid gold over a babbling brook. You pause to drink from the fresh water, cool and invigorating against your tongue. Nearby, the rustle of leaves reveals a family of deer, their eyes wide and watchful. The peaceful scene contrasts with the constant vigilance required to avoid hazards on the trail, unexpected weather shifts, wild animals, and the ever-present risk of injury. Lunch is a modest affair, consisting mostly of salted meat and hardtack, but the companionship around the campfire makes the meal more palatable. Settlers often exchanged recipes and cooking tips, adapting their meals based on available ingredients and the seasons. Some even managed to grow small gardens near their campsites, cultivating herbs and vegetables when conditions allowed. As the afternoon sun climbs, you notice dark clouds gathering again. The trail ahead includes a steep ridge known for sudden fogs that can disorient travelers. You watch as the fog begins to roll in, thick and heavy, swallowing trees and hills in its misty embrace. Navigation becomes tricky, and the sound of wheels crunching over gravel seems amplified in the quiet. The pioneers relied on compass bearings and local knowledge, but historians still argue how reliable these methods were when visibility was poor. The wagons move slowly, the drivers calling out warnings to one another, while the oxen tread cautiously. You feel the dampness in the air and the chill settling into your bones. As night approaches, you find shelter beneath a rocky overhang, the sound of dripping water echoing softly. The fire is smaller tonight, its warmth a welcome comfort against the coolness. Stories unfold in whispers, tales of lost travelers who vanished in the fog, and the strange noises heard on misty nights. These stories, while unsettling, offer a shared bond among the group, a way to confront fears together. The stars are obscured, behind clouds, but the soft patter of rain begins just as sleep beckons. You nestle into your blankets, the rhythmic sound soothing and steady. Thoughts drift toward tomorrow's path, the unknown always ahead, but softened by the steady pulse of camp life and the shared journey. With the gentle rain as a lullaby, you close your eyes, letting exhaustion and peace carry you into a deep, restful sleep. The dawn breaks slowly today, filtered through a thick layer of clouds that hang low over the trail. You pull your blanket tighter as you step out of the tent, the cool morning air carrying a faint scent of damp leaves and wood smoke. Around you, the camp stirs with a quiet energy. Horses neigh softly, and the low murmur of voices blends with the rustling of canvas and the clinking of metal as preparations begin. The trail here winds through a valley, lined with towering evergreens, their needles casting long, cool shadows over the path. The soft crunch of wagon wheels over gravel and twigs creates a steady cadence that matches the rhythm of your breathing. You feel the earthy scent of moss and pine sap underfoot, grounding you in this moment far from the bustle of towns or cities. As you fall into step alongside the wagons, you notice the careful way pioneers maintain their pace, mindful of the steep inclines and narrow passes ahead. The terrain demands patience and attention, a far cry from the open plains where speed was easier to maintain. Along the way, you catch sight of delicate wildflowers, bluebells and trilliums, nestled among ferns and underbrush. Their quiet beauty seems to mock the harshness of the journey, a small reminder that life persists in even the most challenging places. Settlers often carried pressed specimens in journals, though historians still debate how accurate these early botanical collections were, given the limited knowledge and sometimes fanciful descriptions. Mid-morning brings a natural spring, its clear water bubbling over smooth stones. You kneel to drink, the cold refreshment a sharp contrast to the growing warmth of the day. Nearby, a family of raccoons rummages through a pile of fallen leaves, their masked faces curious but wary of human presence. Wildlife sightings like this were common, though many pioneers preferred to keep a respectful distance, aware that some animals could be unpredictable or dangerous. Lunch is a simple affair: cornbread, dried fruit, and a chunk of smoked pork. But the camaraderie at the campsite adds a richness that transcends the food itself. Conversations drift to the peculiar customs and superstitions travelers picked up on the road, such as avoiding travel on Fridays or carrying lucky charms to ward off bad luck. You recall a quirky story of a settler who carried a rabbit's foot for months, only to lose it in the dust and promptly have a streak of mishaps that he blamed on the lost talisman. The afternoon is warm and sunny, but the trail ahead narrows as it winds through rocky terrain. The sound of wheels scraping against stones fills the air, mingling with the occasional grunt of oxen straining uphill. Some pioneers used ropes to help haul wagons over particularly rough spots, a method that required teamwork and careful coordination. Historians still argue whether these efforts truly made the journey safer or merely slowed progress and increased fatigue. As you crest a ridge, the view opens up to a sweeping valley below, its green fields dotted with wildflowers and distant lakes shimmering in the sunlight. The sight inspires a brief sense of wonder and hope, a mental oasis amid the exhaustion. Nightfall finds you gathered around the fire, the flames flickering against the darkening sky. Stories are shared, some humorous, some cautionary. As the group settles into a comfortable routine of rest and reflection, you listen to tales of previous travelers who overcame great odds, of moments of unexpected kindness, and of the steady persistence that defines the Oregon Trail experience. The stars emerge one by one, their steady glow a quiet reminder of the vast world beyond the trail. You lie back on your bedroll, the sounds of the forest around you blending with the crackle of the fire and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The day's weariness seeps into your bones, and with a final deep breath, you let yourself drift into the soothing embrace of sleep. The gentle hum of dawn awakens you, the soft light filtering through the leaves casting dappled shadows across your tent. You rise slowly, muscles still tender from the previous day's climb, and breathe in the fresh forest air tinged with the scent of pine and damp earth. Around the camp, preparations begin quietly. Wagons are loaded, animals fed, and breakfast fires stoked to life. Today's journey will lead you deeper into a stretch known for its rugged terrain and sparse settlements, where the beauty of untouched wilderness contrasts with the challenges of isolation. The path narrows again, winding between rocky ledges and towering evergreens that seem to close in on either side. The sounds of creaking wood and hooves on soft soil mix with distant bird calls, creating a natural symphony that accompanies your steady pace. You notice patches of wild mushrooms nestled among fallen logs and leaf litter, some edible, some not, a fact well known to the pioneers who often relied on local knowledge to avoid poisonings. Historians still argue about how widespread foraging was among settlers, and whether it was a necessary survival tactic or an occasional supplement to rations. Mid-morning brings a brief respite at a shaded creek where you refill your water skin, the coolness of the liquid, a welcome relief from the increasing warmth. Nearby, you spot a small beaver dam, its careful construction a testament to the industriousness of nature amid the vast wilderness. The settlers admired such engineering feats, but had little understanding of their ecological significance. As you move forward, the trail becomes steeper, requiring more effort from both humans and animals. You hear the strained breaths of oxen pulling heavy loads uphill, their pace slowed but determined. The pioneers employed various techniques to ease the burden, including resting frequently and adjusting wagon loads. Some carried tools for repairing broken axles and wheels, essential for survival on the rough path. You recall a quirky pioneer tale of a wagon wheel that was famously repaired using a section of harness leather and sheer stubbornness, a story that spread through camps and lifted spirits in tough times. Lunch is simple but hearty: corn mush, salted beef, and dried apples, shared under the shade of a large oak. Conversation drifts to the unpredictable weather patterns in this region, with sudden storms capable of turning the trail into a muddy quagmire. You remember hearing how some pioneers would build quick shelters from branches and canvas during unexpected downpours, a practice that could mean the difference between comfort and misery. The afternoon sun dips lower, casting long shadows as the trail levels out and opens into a meadow filled with wildflowers and buzzing insects. The scent of fresh grass and blooming blossoms is a balm to tired senses. You watch a group of settlers tending to their horses and cattle, their movements practiced and efficient. Careful animal husbandry was critical, and losing livestock to disease or accidents was a significant setback. Historians still debate the effectiveness of some veterinary remedies pioneers used, many based on folk knowledge and tradition rather than science. As evening falls, you arrive at a small clearing, ideal for camping, the soft ground inviting rest. The campfire is lit, and the smell of roasting meat mingles with the cool night air. Stories flow easily, blending humor and hardship as the group reflects on the day's journey. You feel the comforting weight of shared experience, the bonds forged through adversity. The stars overhead twinkle steadily, their constellations familiar guides in the dark. You settle into your bedroll, the quiet crackle of the fire and the gentle rustle of leaves lulling you towards sleep. Your thoughts already wandering toward tomorrow's unknown paths. The dawn is gentle today, with a soft golden light spilling across the horizon as you rise from your bedroll. The cool morning air carries the faint scent of wildflowers and freshly turned earth, wrapping around you like a comforting blanket. As you emerge from your tent, the camp is already alive with quiet movement, the steady clatter of cooking utensils, the soft nickering of horses, and the low hum of voices blending into a peaceful morning chorus. Today's leg of the journey takes you through a stretch of mixed woodlands and open plains, where the landscape shifts subtly but noticeably with each mile traveled. The trail here is less rugged, allowing the wagons to pick up a slightly brisker pace, though the need for caution remains ever present. You notice the ground beneath your feet, soft with fallen leaves and pine needles, offering a muted cushion for the steady march forward. The pioneers often took note of the soil quality and plant life, believing it could hint at upcoming terrain and weather conditions. Historians still argue how accurate these early environmental readings were, but the practice underscores the intimate relationship settlers developed with the land. As the sun climbs higher, patches of sunlight dance through the trees, illuminating clusters of wild berries hanging low on thorny bushes. You remember the tales of settlers foraging for these treats, balancing hunger with the risk of consuming unfamiliar or potentially harmful plants. A delicate dance of survival and caution. Mid-morning finds you beside a broad river, its waters sparkling and clear as they meander lazily downstream. Crossing here requires careful planning. Makeshift rafts and shallow fords were common crossing methods, but the currents were unpredictable. Many pioneers dreaded river crossings, knowing that a single misstep could lead to loss of supplies, or worse, You recall hearing a peculiar story about a settler who lost his favorite fiddle to the river's grasp, a loss mourned far more deeply than some food supplies. Lunch is a simple meal of corn cakes and jerky eaten under the dappled shade of a large sycamore. Conversations turn to the strange and sometimes humorous customs settlers adopted to pass the time. Singing ballads, telling ghost stories, and even playing rudimentary games with dice made from carved bone. These small rituals offered a welcome distraction from the relentless challenges of the trail. In the afternoon, the landscape opens into rolling hills dotted with clusters of wildflowers and tall grasses that sway lazily in the breeze. The wagons trundle steadily along, their wheels marking a rhythmic pattern on the soft earth. You feel the steady warmth of the sun on your skin, mingling with the faint scent of smoke from distant campfires. Some pioneers practiced fire rituals or left small offerings to the land, hoping to secure safe passage. A practice whose origins historians still debate, reflecting a blend of Native American influences and European superstitions. As evening approaches, the trail narrows once again, winding through a dense stand of cottonwoods whose leaves shimmer softly in the fading light. The air cools, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and wood smoke. Camp is set up quickly in a small clearing, the soft grass inviting rest and quiet reflection. Around the fire, stories flow freely, blending moments of humor with sober reflection. You listen to tales of unexpected kindnesses from strangers, lost supplies found, and the sheer determination that fueled the journey forward. As night deepens, the stars peek through the thinning clouds, their steady glow a reassuring presence. You lie back on your bedroll, the gentle crackle of the fire and the whisper of the wind in the trees lulling you towards sleep. Your thoughts settling on the trail yet traveled and the promise of rest to come. The morning light seeps softly through the canvas of your tent, warm and mellow, a gentle invitation to begin the day. You stretch out, feeling the familiar stiffness in your limbs from yesterday's journey, but also the quiet anticipation that comes with pressing onward into the unknown. Around you, the camp stirs slowly. Horses nicker softly, wagons creak as they are prepared, and the faint aroma of brewing coffee or weak tea drifts through the air. Today's trail meanders through a mosaic of meadows and woodlands, where wild grasses sway in the breeze and birdsong fills the quiet spaces between footsteps and wheels. You step out onto the soft earth, the ground cool and springy beneath. Your boots, a refreshing change from the rocky terrain of earlier days. Settlers often observed the changing flora and fauna as signs of shifting seasons and potential weather patterns, though historians still debate how much these observations truly impacted their travel decisions. The trail soon leads you to a gently flowing stream, its clear water glinting in the morning sun. You pause to refill your canteen, feeling the crisp coolness as it washes away the dust and dryness of the road. Nearby, a family of deer grazes, cautiously at the water's edge, their delicate movements almost reverent in this quiet sanctuary. Wildlife encounters like this were both a welcome distraction and a reminder of the wilderness still surrounding you. Mid-morning is marked by a break at a small clearing dotted with wildflowers and soft mosses. Here, the pioneers often took a moment to rest and share news or rumors from other travelers, a form of early communication and community building along the trail. Some carried journals or sketchbooks, recording landscapes and events with varying degrees of accuracy and artistry, a rich but imperfect historical record that scholars continue to analyze and interpret. The sun climbs steadily, warming the air and coaxing a pleasant drowsiness that you fight off with sips of water and steady strides. The path twists upward through a series of gentle hills, the incline manageable but constant. Your oxen grunt softly as they pull the wagons, muscles straining but steady. Settlers employed various strategies to preserve the strength of their animals, from scheduled rest stops to feeding special fodder, yet many still faced losses due to exhaustion or illness. A quirky anecdote comes to mind about a pioneer who claimed his oxen preferred listening to fiddle music, believing it soothed their nerves and boosted stamina. Whether fact or folklore remains part of the enduring debate. Lunch consists of hearty stew, made from salted beef and dried vegetables, shared under the shelter of a large elm tree whose broad canopy offers cool respite. Conversation drifts to tales of the unpredictable weather, from sudden thunderstorms that turned trails to mud baths to blistering heat waves that sapped energy and spirits alike. The pioneers learned to adapt, building temporary shelters and adjusting travel times accordingly. The afternoon's journey takes you through open prairie, where the wind carries the scent of fresh grass and distant wildflowers. The wide horizon offers a panoramic view of the landscape stretching endlessly, a humbling reminder of the vastness of this continent and the smallness of any single traveller. Settlers noted landmarks like unusual rock formations or solitary trees as navigational aids, though historians still debate how reliable or widespread these practices truly were. As dusk approaches, the trail narrows once more, weaving through a thicket of willows whose slender branches sway gracefully in the evening breeze. The air cools rapidly, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and blooming night flowers. Camp is quickly established near a shallow creek, the soft burble of water providing a soothing soundtrack to the evening's routines. Around the fire, laughter and quiet conversations blend with the crackling flames. You hear stories of past hardships and triumphs, each tale adding another thread to the rich tapestry of shared experience. As stars emerge overhead, steady and calm, you settle onto your bedroll, the gentle sounds of night wrapping around you like a comforting embrace. Your eyelids grow heavy, and with a deep breath, you let the quiet of the trail carry you gently into. The first light of dawn creeps gently across the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds as you stir awake. The familiar creak of wagons being readied, and the low murmur of voices slowly fill the crisp morning air. Today's leg promises a mixture of open plains and wooded patches, a varied landscape that keeps your senses alert despite the weariness creeping into your limbs. You step out of your tent onto the cool ground, feeling the slight dampness of morning dew on your boots, the scent of fresh earth mingling with the faint aroma of coffee and campfire smoke. Around you, fellow travelers prepare for the day with quiet efficiency, their movements practiced and deliberate. The trail ahead is well worn, but still holds the promise of unexpected encounters and challenges. As you move forward, the wide open prairie stretches before you, golden grasses waving gently in the breeze. You notice the occasional wildflower, bright spots of colour against the sea of gold. Pioneers often relied on these natural signs to gauge the health of the land and the coming seasons, though historians still debate how much these observations truly guided their journey. Along the way, you pass a small thicket where settlers have left simple wooden markers, often carved with initials or symbols, as waypoints or memorials, a practice rich in personal significance but little studied by scholars. Mid-morning brings a pause beside a clear, bubbling spring, its waters cool and refreshing as you fill your canteen. Nearby, a family of rabbits scurries through the underbrush, their quick movements a lively contrast to the steady pace of your journey. Wildlife encounters, while common, were often tinged with both awe and caution, as the wilderness could be unpredictable and unforgiving. Lunch is modest: cornbread, salted pork, and dried apples, shared under the shade of a sprawling cottonwood whose leaves whisper softly in the breeze. The conversation around you drifts to the various superstitions and rituals settlers carried with them. Lucky charms, prayers whispered before crossing rivers, and songs sung to keep spirits high. Such customs were as much about maintaining morale as about any true protective power, a blend of hope and habit that historians continue to explore. The afternoon stretches on with the sun climbing higher, the trail winding through gentle hills and patches of dense forest. The scent of pine and earth fills the air, mingling with the distant calls of birds and the steady rhythm of hooves on soft ground. You watch as oxen labour steadily, their breaths visible in the cool afternoon air, muscles flexing under the strain. Careful tending of animals was a cornerstone of pioneer life, with many relying on traditional remedies and folk knowledge to keep them healthy. an area of ongoing scholarly debate regarding effectiveness. As evening approaches, the trail leads you into a narrow valley flanked by rocky outcrops, shadows lengthening as the sun dips low. The air cools quickly, carrying the scent of damp stone and wood smoke. Camp is set near a small, sheltered glade, the soft earth inviting rest after the day's exertions. The fire crackles to life, casting warm light and gentle heat, around which stories and laughter soon gather. You hear tales of narrow escapes, unexpected friendships, and the quiet determination that has kept everyone moving forward. The stars begin to twinkle overhead, a familiar and reassuring presence as you settle onto your bedroll. The night sounds, the rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the steady murmur of the creek, create a lullaby that soothes your weary mind. You close your eyes, letting the gentle rhythm of the wilderness carry you into a peaceful sleep. Morning arrives softly, with the sky a gentle wash of pastel colors, as you awaken to the familiar chorus of birdsong and the distant lowing of cattle. You stretch, feeling the pleasant ache of muscles worked hard over many days, and step out into the fresh air that carries the mingled scents of pine needles, earth, and a hint of wood smoke. The camp around you begins to stir, wagons are readied, and the murmur of conversations rises gently like a waking tide. Today's journey takes you through a patchwork of forest glades and open grasslands, each step revealing subtle shifts in terrain and atmosphere. You notice the crunch of dry leaves underfoot and the soft hum of insects flitting through the sunlight, grounding you in the present, despite the trail's relentless demands. Settlers often noted such small changes, interpreting them as signals of approaching weather or changes in soil quality, though historians still debate how much these observations genuinely influence travel decisions. As you press forward, the Aishiwari path winds alongside a narrow creek, its waters clear and cool, tumbling over smooth stones with a steady murmur that soothes your senses. You pause briefly to drink and rest, watching as dragonflies dart across the surface and a lone turtle basks on a sunlit rock. Encounters with wildlife brought both comfort and caution to travelers, blending moments of wonder with reminders of nature's unpredictable moods. Mid-morning is marked by a rest stop in a small clearing where wild raspberries grow thick and sweet. Settlers often forage such treats, balancing hunger with care to avoid poisonous lookalikes, a survival skill passed down through generations. You remember hearing a quirky tale of a pioneer who mistook wild nightshade berries for edible ones, a mistake narrowly averted thanks to a neighbor's quick intervention. Lunch is a simple affair. Hardtack biscuits dipped in syrup and a thin broth simmered over the fire, shared beneath the dappled shade of a tall oak whose broad branches sway gently in the breeze. Around you, the group exchanges stories of peculiar laws encountered in various territories, from restrictions on livestock in towns to rules about what songs could be sung in public gatherings. Such odd legal tidbits often sparked light-hearted debate and laughter, a welcome respite from the trail's rigors. The afternoon sees the trail climbing steadily, the air growing cooler and crisper with each step upward. The forest thickens, the canopy filtering sunlight into mottled patterns on the ground. The scent of pine and damp earth deepens, accompanied by the occasional call of a distant hawk. You notice how the pioneers adapted their pace to this more challenging terrain, often breaking their journey into shorter stages to conserve energy, a practical strategy still discussed by historians evaluating trail efficiency. As evening nears, the path opens into a serene meadow bathed in the golden glow of sunset. Wildflowers nod softly in the breeze, and the distant silhouette of hills beckons as a gentle promise of rest. Camp is set near a cluster of fir trees, the air alive, with the gentle crackle of the fire and the quiet murmur of voices winding down after a long day. Stories unfold around the flames, some humorous, some reflective, each weaving a rich tapestry of shared experience. As stars emerge overhead, you lay back on your bedroll, the cool night air brushing softly against your skin. The familiar sounds of crickets and rustling leaves form a lullaby, coaxing your thoughts to slow and your body to relax. With a deep breath, you close your eyes, letting the peaceful night enfold you as sleep draws near. The day begins in the quiet hush of dawn, soft light spilling gently over the horizon as you rouse from your bedroll. The camp around you moves with a calm efficiency. Wagons are loaded, animals fed, and last-minute preparations made for the journey ahead. The air carries a crisp freshness, tinged with the earthy scent of pine needles and damp soil, mingled faintly with the smoky residue of last night's fire. Today's leg of the trail leads through rolling hills speckled with wildflowers and shaded by stands of birch and maple, a landscape that seems to hold a promise of finality and reflection. You feel the weight of the journey behind you, a mix of fatigue and quiet pride settling in your bones. Each step forward is a gentle reminder of the hardships endured and the dreams that propelled you onward. The trail winds upward, offering occasional glimpses of distant valleys and shimmering lakes, their surfaces catching the morning light like scattered jewels. Settlers often regarded such views as blessings, moments of awe that help sustain morale through the toughest stretches, though historians still debate how much these glimpses influence decisions to press on or pause. Along the way, you notice carefully placed cairns, piles of stones left by travelers past, serving as markers or memorials, a silent conversation across time. Mid-morning arrives with a rest beside a clear, cold stream where the water tumbles over smooth stones, inviting you to wash away the dust and weariness. You watch as small fish dart beneath the surface, and a lone heron stands statuesque along the bank, its patient vigil a symbol of calm persistence. Lunch is a modest but satisfying meal of dried meat, fresh berries, and crusty bread, eaten under the shade of a towering pine whose needles whisper softly in the breeze. The group shares stories of the odd inventions and creative solutions pioneers employed to overcome obstacles, portable stoves, makeshift bridges, and clever wagon repairs, a testament to human ingenuity that still fascinates historians. The afternoon brings a steady, gentle descent, the path winding through a peaceful forest dappled with sunlight and shadow. The scent of pine and wildflowers mingles with the crispness of the air, and the soft crunch of leaves underfoot provides a soothing rhythm. You reflect on the companionship and resilience that have carried you this far, the quiet moments of kindness exchanged amid the daily struggles. As the sun begins to dip toward the horizon, the trail opens into a wide valley, bathed in golden, a tranquil scene that feels like a final reward. Camp is set near a slow-moving river, its surface reflecting the colors of the sunset like liquid amber. The fire burns low as voices grow soft, and the night sounds weave a gentle tapestry of crickets, frogs, and the occasional owl's call. You lie back on your bedroll, the cool earth beneath you steady and reassuring, and close your eyes. The vast sky overhead, dotted with countless stars, invites you to drift peacefully into sleep, carrying with you the memories and quiet triumphs of the trail. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As your breathing slows and the night deepens, you feel the gentle embrace of rest settling over your body and mind. The fire's endless expanse of the trail behind you fades softly into the quiet corners of memory, a landscape painted with both hardship and hope. Each moment of struggle, every step through dust and shadow, has woven itself into the fabric of your story, a story not just of survival, but of quiet courage and resilience. The stars above continue their steady, silent watch, a timeless reminder of the vastness beyond and the small but significant place you hold within it. Feel the steady rhythm of your heartbeat sync with the soft whispers of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the soothing murmur of a nearby stream. Let these gentle sounds cradle you, drawing you deeper into peaceful sleep. Tomorrow is yet another day, but for now, rest is your companion. Allow yourself to drift, free from worry or haste, wrapped in the calm certainty of this moment. You are safe, you are steady, and you are exactly where you need to be.